ગુડ આફ્ટરનૂન બોલભાઈ સર.
ગુડ આફ્ટરનૂન, કેમ છો?
બસ મજામાં સર, તમે કેમ છો?
સારું છે. અમારો અવાજ સંભળાય છે?
એકદમ ક્લિયર છે, એકદમ.
સર વેલકમ.
આ ડોક્ટર અંજનબેન ખુટ છે.
ઓકે, થેન્ક યુ.
અને હા,
Now am I audible?
Yes, Parthbhai.
Okay. And is this audible?
हो येतोय ना आवाज. हा मला दिसतोय. अजून एक जॉईन होता ते. आता इथे नाही दिसणार. मागे आता मागे झोपली तर दिसणार नाही, कारण की मध्ये मी येतोय. एवढाच भाग दिसतोय बघ आता याचा एवढाच भाग दिसतोय. सोलन, हा PS सोलंकी.
ते हे लावू ना त्याला
काय
बॅटरी स्पीकर
म्हणजे जरूर नाही आवाज येतोय.
स्पीकर लावू म्हणजे आवाज चांगला येईल जरा, सगळ्यांना ऐकू येईल असं.
तुझा त्यांचा आवाज येण्यासाठी स्पीकर
तुम्हालाही बोलताना आवाज यायला पाहिजे.
तो तर याच्यात न जाणार आहे, त्याच्यात.
Hello.
लावू ना त्याचा स्पीकर लावू म्हणजे आवाज मोठा येईल.
Yeah, sure.
Hello.
तुषार करा अच्युत शंकर प्रभृति सामा चार सा संस्थिता वन्दे तां परमेश्वरीं भगवतीं बुद्धिप्रदां
Good morning, sir. Sir, you please unmute yourself.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
હવે અવાજ આવ્યો બરાબર અનમ્યુટ કર્યા પછી અવાજ
Yes,
આવ્યો.
sir.
I would like to request Dr. Piyush Solanki sir to invite to give brief about today's event and invitation to our guest speakers. Sir, please unmute yourself. Piyush sir.
Hello. Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
now you are audible, sir.
Yeah, Parth sir. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you are audible. I would like to request you to welcome note and brief about today's event, sir.
Yeah. So sorry for this technical issues. So we would like from on behalf of the IISc, Saurashtra University, Department of Physics, Saurashtra University, and Saurashtra University itself, we would like to welcome Dr. Kannan sir from the CSMCR Bhavnagar, Rita Professor Podbore sir, and Dr. Rajesh Patel sir for today's eminent talk. So good afternoon everyone. Dr. Ranjan Ben Khut, Parth sir from IISc, and all the participants, other faculties of the university. In the memory of Professor C.V. Raman sir, is the Nobel laureate, and two subject gold medalist. Very importantly, he got the gold medal in English as well as physics for his innovation in the Raman effect in 1928. We are celebrating since last 36 years because government of India has declared as a National Science Day for today in 1986. And for this National Science Day celebration, with the collaboration with IISc, Saurashtra University and Department of Physics, we organized today's event, National Science Day celebration. It has been decided to cover the poster presentation, which has been already completed in the morning session for the today's event. And now after this inauguration, we would like to continue with the first lecture by Director CSMCIR, Dr. Kannan sir, followed by the second lecture by Dr. Rajesh Patel sir. He is from the Bioscience Department, Surat, and Professor Vijay Podbare sir from the MS University is the retired professor. So three talks importantly means we are trying to cover all the subjects in the science, and throughout the event we have the registered participants from various faculties of the Saurashtra University and outside the university. Almost 400 participants are there, and these three lectures and some poster presentation. We hope all the students enjoyed, all the participants enjoyed the day with the variety of the talks by eminent professors and subject experts. So thank you, Parth sir, for this opportunity to provide the students basically to get involved in this National Science Day celebration in the Saurashtra University program. Thank you.
Thank you, Piyush sir, for giving a brief about today's event. Now I would like to request Dr. Ranjan Khut to brief about Institutions Innovation Council and brief about Innovation Center at our university.
Thank you, Parth, for inviting me. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good afternoon, and wish you a happy and active Science Day, one and all, after a long pandemic COVID situation. On behalf of Institute's Innovation Cell of Saurashtra University, once again, I welcome you all. Due to some inconvenience, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Girish Bhimani sir, is not present here. But we also further welcome to renowned speakers of today's function, Dr. Srinivasan Kannan, from Director of CSMCRI Bhavnagar, Professor V.N. Podbare sir, former professor from MS University, and Professor Rajesh Patel sir from Veer Narmad, South Gujarat University, and all participants of these events on this virtual platform for this special occasion of Science Day celebration. As Dr. Piyush already depicted in his speech why we celebrate the Science Day. Sir Chandrasekhar Venkat Raman is one of the such prominent figure in science. He has discovered the Raman effect in the year of 1928. Had awarded a Nobel Prize in 1930 for this work. To celebrate the victory in 1986, National Council of Science and Technology, Government of India declared the 28th February as a Science Day to honor them. Dr. Jitendra Singh, Union Minister of Science and Technology, declared the theme of this Science Day for this year is Integrated Approach in Science and Technology for Sustainable Futures. our Honorable Minister, Prime Minister Sri Narendra Bhai Modi sir has started the Startup India with the vision to prepare a job giver rather than the job seeker. And the goal of Ministry of Education, Government of India has established the Ministry of Education Innovation Cell to systematically foster the culture of innovation among all higher education institutes. The primary mandate of Ministry of Education Innovation Cell is to encourage, inspire, and nurture the young students by supporting them to work with new ideas and transform them into prototypes while they are in formative years. Saurashtra University is one of the organizations that have constituted the IIC to foster the vision of Ministry of Education and be a part of the promotion and development of innovation ecosystem. The major focus of Ministry of Education Innovation Cell is to create the vibrant local innovation ecosystem, startup supporting mechanism in higher education institute, prepare an institute for Atal ranking institution on innovation achievements framework, establish a function ecosystem for scouting ideas and pre-incubable of ideas, develop a better conjunctivity ability among the students. With this objective of Ministry of Education, Innovation Cell and the function of university is to dedicated to instruction, research and extending the knowledge to the public. Ministry of Education Innovation Cell instruct the higher education institute to establish innovation cell at institute level and carry out time-bound activity with respect to innovation and entrepreneurship development. So the function of IIC is to conduct the various innovation, IPR and entrepreneurship related activities prescribed by the Ministry of Education Innovation Cell in time-bound fashion. Identify and reward the innovation and share the success stories. Organize periodic workshop, seminar, interaction with entrepreneurs, inventors, professionals, and create a mentor pool for student innovators. Network with peers and national entrepreneurship development organization. Create an institution innovation portal to highlight the innovative projects carried out by the institution's faculties and students. Organize the hackathons, idea competition, mini challenges with the involvement of the industries. With this brief, once again, I welcome you all for these events. Enjoy the day and gain the knowledge from the renowned speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving a very good insight regarding the Institutions Innovation Council. I would like to now request Dr. Harikrishna Parikh sir to give a vote of thanks. As today our Honorable Vice Chancellor is not being able to join this meeting, sir has given us all the best for this celebration of National Science Day. And I would like to request now Dr. Harikrishna Parikh sir to give a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Parth. Okay, at the onset, I would like to start thanking with our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir Dr. Ethan sir, for his continuous support and encouragement for organizing such programs. Although due to some other engagement he could not be present here, he has conveyed his wishes for the success of the program. Next, I thank Dr. Srinivasan Kannan sir. He is Director of CSNCRI Bhavnagar. Dr. Rajesh Patel sir, Professor at Bioscience Department, VNSGU, and Dr. Vijay Kodbare sir, former Professor at the Department of Applied Science, MS University, Baroda. Sir, indeed your knowledge will help us in budding the innovation in our fields. Next, I thank Dr. Piyush Solanki for all his efforts to make this program reach at this level. As per the number he has paid, there are 400 participants in this event. So, publicizing the event and helping more people to join this event. So, thank you very much for the helping organizing this event. Next, I thank Dr. Ranjan Khun for nice introduction of all the activities of Institutional Innovation Cell and always mentoring the activities, and Parth for being backbone of the IIC. So That is all from the arrangement or organizer side. I must be thankless if I don't thank the participants in the poster presentation as well as listeners events. So I thank all the participants who are present in this meeting. So with that note, I end my thanking session. Hand over mic to Parth. Parth,
Thank you, sir,
continue.
for the vote of thanks. Now, I would like to request all the participants that we will be starting our first session. I would like to request Dr. Ranjan Khoot to introduce our first speaker.
ઓલરેડી તમારું નામ જ છે તો એની ભૂલ થઈ ગઈ પાર્થભાઈ
Yes, ma'am. Naliapala sir is here.
હા
I would like to
નલિયાપરા
request
ઓલરેડી
Dr.
હિયર ઓલરેડી
Okay,
હિયર
okay. Yes, I would like to request Dr. Naliapara sir to invite our today's first speaker.
Dr. Srinivas.
Yes, thank you, Parth. Thank you, Parth. Now, I request Professor Dr. Kannan Srinivasan to deliver his speech on a particular area. Say he's working and he's specialized a lot, and also he has quite a wonderful research and some awards and honors. The list is a bit long, but I am very happy that I request Dr. Professor Kannan Srinivasan to deliver his speech on regarding today's celebration of Science Day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me just share my presentation. I hope, the slides are visible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Thank you very much. Just a moment. Let me just close this window. It's really causing me kind of a trouble. Yeah, first of all, I must compliment Saurashtra University, especially the Institute's Innovation Council, as well as the Department of Physics, in organizing a kind of a one-day event where there have been two major activities they've planned. One basically to promote the young students through a poster competition, and the other one is by the expert lecturers. And that way, they are basically celebrating the science on this occasion. Of course, Dr. Ranjana has already made a kind of a setting of why we are basically celebrating this 28th of February. So I think everyone who is basically attending on this call would be very clearly knowing about it. What is its impact? In fact, I would strongly urge all the people, because they're all academic people, they're all research-oriented people. One of the things that I found very strongly with the Saurashtra University, though your VC is not to be present, his message was pretty clear in the website, where he is very strongly advocating on the research acumen building in Saurashtra University with a kind of a quality education that is being imparted. Those are the two major domains through which the university is basically geared up, and it is also reflected in terms of its performance. And my sincere compliments to all the leaders who have been associated on its growth. I took this occasion to say about the importance of partnerships in science. Okay, science has two orbits, mainly in terms of an individual brilliance and in terms of an application coming out from that of a science into a societal value. Okay, so for the first one, I mean, which is largely individual centric, including Professor Raman, on whose discovery of Raman's effect we are celebrating this day. It's a sheer individual brilliance. Okay, but I mean, if one were to take the science into a kind of a value, either in terms of a value addition in the industry or value addition in the society, it requires tremendous amount of partnership. So I'm just going to share some stories, okay? Because most of the the audience would be, I'm told that the students community, and he was telling, Dr. Solanki was telling that roughly around 400 students are connected on this call. And these kind of stories will basically motivate the young faculties and young students to engage in partnership for the larger good. That's the whole idea. And these examples are largely from the institute's perspective. And if one, I mean, it is also important that, I mean, it is important for many of us to know about it, though, I mean, some of you are aware of it, but it so happens that, I mean, the awareness about the organization, awareness about the institution is also equally important. So we belong to a kind of an organization called as Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, and which, I mean, there's one lab, they're working on different areas, whether it is on a road or aviation or plants or chemicals or knowledge or, I mean, molecular biology, any on food, any kind of a topic that the human fabric basically touches. One would always see that CSIR is playing a kind of an important role in the nation's building through its constituent laboratories spread across the country. And it's also important to know that, I mean, there is only one such CSIR laboratory in the state of Gujarat, and that is CSIR Central Salt and Marine Chemicals Research Institute, which is located in Bhavnagar, in this erstwhile Saurashtra. See, I think what is important to know is, I mean, the CSMCRA also has a field station, which is called as Marine Algal Research Station. And one of the story I'm going to share about it is the story that basically comes from this particular place. How, I mean, it's a kind of a field station for this institute located in the southern state Tamil Nadu, which is involved in certain sciences, which I will discuss as we progress. And historically, it is also important to reflect how the science and technologies are groomed in this country. Historically, I mean, this institute is one of the earliest institutes after the India's independence in 1947. This institute was born just after 7 years of the Indian independence. And the then Prime Minister, Pandit Nehruji, is inaugurating this particular institute on 10th April 1954. And this institute was decided to be instituted for the fact that they wanted to have a kind of a self-reliance in the domain of salt. The reason being that a lot of salt deposits, when India partitioned with Pakistan, a lot of salt deposits were moved into that zone, creating a kind of a difficulty for the self-reliance of salt in the country. So, and the fact was very clear at that particular point of time. Science and technology, which is even today the same, scenario. Science and technology is one very important performance indicator for the nation's growth and nation's well-being. And this particular domain is not an exception. And salt was a commodity which they wanted to have a kind of a self-reliance. And that's how this institute contributed through the research frontiers for making a kind of a large development of salt producing areas in the country. Fortunately, we had a kind of a fantastic coastline. India is one of the richest coastlines across the globe, and that gave a kind of a humongous opportunity for the salt to be basically cultivated. And that's how, I mean, our country, which was having a kind of a difficulty to serve their even own countrymen for the salt, at the time of the independence, is now the world's third largest salt producer. And that's the kind of what do you call transition on this domain the country had basically progressed, and this institute played a very important role on this. And at this point of time, we have something like around 200 odd staff with a kind of something like around 85 scientists and around 250 students, research students who are basically working on different domains. And largely the institutions like us largely focuses on major three important things, which is in fact demonstrated in the earlier remarks also by in the introductory of the what do you call speakers, where I mean the science are supposed to basically impart knowledge, and the knowledge is basically creating a kind of an intellectual value, and this intellectual value basically benefits the what do you call society at large, and this cycle basically continuously goes on. Okay, and at this point of time, I mean, if one were to see at it, and this slide, I am basically projecting it to for the students to have a kind of a clarity to know what kind of a domain of research that we are doing at this point of time to motivate those students who are working in chemistry, who are working in physics, who are working in life sciences, to see, I mean, and explore, I mean, the research capacity of this particular state through a kind of a university education along with the support of a research institution. So if you one were to see at the broad overview, we have been working in the domains of salt, which I have shared with you recently. And there is also, I mean, a humongous opportunity for marine chemicals, because we work largely around sea and its coastline. So a lot of opportunity for the marine chemicals, and I'll be sharing one of such stories from the marine chemicals also as we go along the presentation. And we also work on algae, which is basically both marine microalgae as well as marine macroalgae. And these are very rich source of certain chemicals which are either cannot be produced or synthesized in the laboratories. And we work extensively on fine and specialty chemicals and bio-based chemicals and CO2-based chemicals, which are extremely important in the nation's context in terms of exploiting the renewable energy and in terms of combating the climate change. And this is largely run through developing some sort of new materials and catalysts, which will enable these kind of transformations. And we work on different polymers and membranes, largely for both aqueous and non-aqueous applications. Especially for the aqueous applications, we work on water, one of the domain which is this institute very strongly pursues, especially in the area of water desalination and purification. And inorganic materials, material science is one of the strongest what do you call chemistry and the engineering interdisciplinary sciences that this institute follows and make some sort of a new molecules which are very difficult to synthesize. These molecules are synthesized for a specific niche applications. These are the large domains of the chemical sciences research that we work. And as far as the biology sciences are concerned, I said we work largely on the seaweeds and marine microalgae and halotolerant plants, and the meaning that these plants are only grown under the saline conditions. And one can get a kind of a different products out of these materials through a kind of a downstream processing. And then one can develop a kind of a cultivation methodology, which are not so what do you call common with that other conventional land-based plants. And you can get a kind of a different biology and biotechnology understanding of these plants and try to understand how they can be basically put into a kind of an advantageous position. Like, for example, I mean, imparting saline agriculture or understanding the kind of a marine ecology or understanding what kind of marine microbial interaction with these kind of plants, something very exciting areas one would largely look into. And these are the sciences that we extensively work on this. And I mean, as I said, I mean, these organization is largely technology-centric organization. So I mean, whatever the demonstration that we do, we largely talk about developing technologies, and these technologies are largely governed by the knowledge and the intellectual strength it brings in. And of course, it also offers different kind of consultancy services also. But the most important thing is what we are going to talk about is it works in collaboration with a lot of institutions, a lot of stakeholders, whether it is industry or government entities or public sector companies or startups, all these kind of people, are a kind of MSMEs. We work in a lot of partnership for these technologies to be basically translated, either through a kind of a collaboration or for technology validation that is largely culminating into a kind of an impacting solutions. So this is the kind of a brief overview of this one. And as Dr. Anjana talked about the theme, integrated approach for S&T for sustainable future. Sustainable future is a very, very big topic. Okay, I mean, if one were to, technically define what is a sustainable future is one that we do something very, skillfully, so that the resources that we are basically consuming today should be basically available even for the future generations without, posing them into any kind of a difficulty. And that's what is sustainability all about. So suppose, for example, 200 years from now, what is available today, if it is wiped out by our mankind, and after 200 years, some of our future generations are going to face some sort of a difficulty because of the non-availability of these pointed resources, that's really causing a kind of an unsustainable planet. And that's what it's all about. Okay, and it's really a big topic, really a big topic. And I mean, every endeavor that we are trying to do, we must ensure that probably, we'll thrive and strive for making our future to be a kind of a sustainable. And I firmly believe for a sustainable future, it involves a kind of a very strong cooperation among the different sets of people. And that's why an integrated approach, what they said, is largely needed. Okay, and especially in the science and technology domain, because now most of you are aware that science and technology, the so-called the divided boundaries, which are hitherto were there in the last 6-7 decades, are slowly now disappearing, and we are slowly entering into an area where there is a kind of a lot of interfacial sciences are happening, and these interfacial sciences are going to bring a kind of a phenomenal impact for delivering some sort of sustainable solutions. And with this kind of a set of the thought, I'm going to share about what is the importance of partnership in delivering these kind of sustainable solutions, and also to see how one can explore a different kind of sciences together for building this kind of building and delivering this kind of a sustainable solution. So the first story that I'm going to talk about is about public-public partnership. Okay, and as far as the I will not go into too technical, because I just wanted to give a kind of a message, and with that message, if the students and the faculty, especially the young faculties, get inspired about how important is collaboration in science and how effective it needs to be basically leveraged, and what would be an impact it would basically create if you are going to work in a kind of a collaboration. If that message is basically cut across, this particular intent of speaking to you all would serve. And this is one classic examples. As I said, we are working on fine chemicals. Just a moment. So we are working on fine chemicals, as I said, and I also said about catalysis as a tool for the synthesis of fine chemicals. Why one should be basically interested in fine chemicals? Whatever the chemicals that you touch in your daily lives, not directly as a chemical, but as a kind of an end of use of a chemical, everything is largely classified under a fine chemical industry. And these fine chemical industries are also kind of a mother industry for your pharmaceutics, for your agro, for your dyes and textiles. Any kind of a chemicals, one would basically depends on fine chemicals, and catalysis of synthesizing these chemicals plays a very, very important role. In fact, I mean, catalysis per se is contributing close to kind of a $2 trillion economy. And in fact, I mean, something like around 5% of this $2 trillion economy is largely in the fine chemical sector. And these fine chemicals are, one can get these fine chemicals through different chemistries, whether it could be oxidation or whether it could be hydrogenation or it is esterification. Different kind of chemistries are there, which I'm sure that most of us have read it in our school textbooks also. And these chemistries, one of the chemistries that is largely used in the fine chemical industry sector is called as hydroformylation. What is this hydroformylation? It's basically, I mean, increasing a carbon number of a molecule. Suppose if I have a 3-carbon molecule, if I want to make a kind of a 4-carbon molecule, you add a kind of a 1 carbon in the form of a carbon monoxide. And through that, I mean, you basically build the, what do you call, carbon-carbon homologous chemistry. And this is a chemistry which is pretty, I mean, close to a kind of an 100-year-old chemistry. And there's been a kind of a huge, what do you call, progress has been made in the last 80, 90 odd years in the various ways by which this chemistry has been used up for making a variety of molecules. But what is so important is all these chemicals, as I said, increasing the homologous of carbon through a kind of a carbon monoxide and hydrogen. What is important is largely this chemistry is what do you call confined with only 2 or 3 major elements in the periodic table. And one of the elements which are basically started by Otto Rehn in the early what do you call 1930s was fundamentally based on a cobalt-based catalyst. So then, I mean, as the what do you call science progressed, the energy efficiency, what do you call selectively forming a particular desired product with respect to that of non-desired products. These are the largely driving factors. Even today, when we are talking about a sustainable solution, these are going to be a kind of a great impact in terms of what do you call designing and developing molecules of our interest. And with this, I mean, in the recent years, I mean, the chemistry has basically what do you call enhanced through a kind of a different sets of ligands, through which, I mean, this particular chemistry is what do you call currently conducted. But I mean, as I said, I mean, you have umpteen number of applications for this particular chemistry, and these kind of compounds are used in your day-to-day products, right from your automobiles to plasticizers to acrylate polymers used in different kinds of what you call day-to-day products. Wherever it is, I mean, this hydroformylation chemistry is largely used. And without, I mean, taking into a kind of a technical, what do you call, jargons, don't worry about the structures. What is important is people wanted to, what do you call, achieve this chemistry with a kind of a conditions under low temperature and pressure, with a kind of a very high activity and selectivity, especially for the normal aldehydes. So when you are basically making a kind of a CC bond forming reactions, you end up either in a kind of a linear aldehyde or you get a kind of a branched aldehyde. So the linear one is more preferred for making a kind of a variety of molecules from that compared to that of a branched aldehyde. And also wanted to see how the catalyst, which is used in this transformation, to be stable and active. And that, with this backdrop, one of the what do you call chemistry that this institute developed is on the olefins hydroformylation for making C4 aldehydes. And this chemistry is very, very challenging chemistry and pertinent chemistry. The reason being this particular what do you call molecule, let's say for example propylene. Propylene is one of the largest produced in refineries. And unfortunately, there is a kind of a significant impact of the use is currently not available in terms of making these kind of an aldehyde functionality. And most of the catalysts which are currently being used in the industries are largely imported catalysts. So there was a kind of a dire need. for developing a kind of an indigenous catalyst which can do this transformation under a kind of an under a kind of energy efficient conditions with a kind of a selectivity which is desired by the industry with respect to that of a benchmarking of catalyst. And this was the partnership with this strength. One of the companies which is extremely popular to all of you, the Bharat Petroleum, they also have a kind of a huge refinery in Kochi, and this particular refinery was producing lots of propylene also. And they were interested in making a kind of aldehydes, and because they wanted to make a kind of a petrochemical complexes. And you're all aware about transitioning of carbon-based fuel to alternate fuel is going to be a kind of a great area to work on. And I'm sure that many of the chemists and physicists and biologists are all gearing it up to make some sort of energy applications through a kind of a non-carbon based source. But of course, as far as the chemicals are concerned, I mean, I don't think you can make any chemicals without carbon in place. So certainly, I mean, whether it is going to be any kind of a fossil or it is any kind of a biomass as a kind of a renewable option, the fuels are going to be made extensively. And with this, insight, Bharat Petroleum felt that, I mean, there is a necessity for developing this kind of a hydroformylation chemistry for developing an indigenous catalyst that can do this job. And with this, thought in mind, they approached us for developing a kind of a catalyst which can benchmark with that of a catalyst which is currently being imported. And it's so happy to say that after lots of struggle, it did not happen on a day or a month or sometimes a few months. Sometimes it takes years to develop a kind of a material which is performing as equivalent to that of a benchmark material, and at the same time deliver something which is very useful for the industry. And with this, I mean, there is a kind of don't worry about the reaction chemistry. What is important is the catalysts were designed, and the catalysts were basically tested under the conditions of what is adopted in the industry, and we could successfully get the hydroformylated products of C4 aldehydes with a very high selectivity of a normal aldehydes, and this was demonstrated in a kind of reactor capacities that is available in the labs. So, I mean, what we do in the labs is largely kind of a smaller capacities, and this gets translated into a kind of a larger capacities, especially into a kind of a commercial plants. But before taking this into a kind of a commercial plans, one would always need a kind of an intermediate assessment. And these intermediate assessment are largely going to be achievable only if you have a kind of a partnership with an industry. And that's what exactly has been done in this case. The catalysts that were developed were basically, I mean, given to Bharat Petroleum, and they have designed and developed a kind of a reactor facility, which is quite larger facility, where, I mean, where these catalysts were again tested and then proved to be efficient. And with this, they are going to basically build a kind of a semi-continuous pilot plant. And if this pilot plant results are going to be encouraging, which is going to happen in this year and next year, and if this is going to be encouraging, and this, they will be basically this catalyst, they will be substituting in their commercial plant for this, for this chemicals synthesis. And that's going to be a kind of an exciting day, that when the catalyst which is currently being imported, if it is replaced by a catalyst which is indigenously developed, which is validated at the semi-pilot scale, this this would be a kind of a remarkable achievement in terms of a knowledge turning into a kind of an application. And this is only would have been possible because of the collaboration, and because the desire that was needed was for the industry, and the industry was basically willing to take up explore it on a kind of a larger scale before it is basically translated into a kind of a commercial scale. And this is a clear-cut, demonstration of a public and a public sector Bharat Petroleum here partnership. The second story that I'm going to talk about is a public-private partnership. What do you, I mean here? I mean it's going to be a kind of a different what do you call a way by which the system works. I'm sure that most of you are aware about India's large contribution in sugarcane. And the sugarcane, I mean, the canes are basically crushed into kind of a juices. And from there, I mean, you get a kind of a sugar. And the product, which is byproduct that is coming out, is a kind of a molasses. And using this molasses, which is used in the distillery for making alcohol, and you generate a kind of an effluent, which is called as spent wash. And why? I mean, this is a kind of a practice which is currently being used in our what do you call all sugar mill industries of the country. What is so important about it is the effluent spent wash. Why? I mean, this is a problem. This problem is because it's a very, I mean, it's a very noxious odor, the very high CBD, BOD, and it is very difficult to treat. And one needs to basically, what do you call, develop a kind of solutions for taking care of this for all the backward integration to be successful. And why this is, of course, I mean, this is also a kind of an environmentally undesired one. So people who are basically discharging this particular spent wash is also basically contributing a kind of a significant change negatively in the environment also. And these are some of the what do you call stories on that. What is important is in the even in the current sector, we are, as I said, I mean, we are going to go on a kind of a renewable based fuels. And ethanol blending is something which is a dream of this nation for it to have a kind of a renewable based energy, thereby having a kind of a positive impact on the climate change. And for this to be basically sustainable, you have to have a kind of a very good backward integration. For more ethanol to be produced, more amount of what do you call spent wash is going to be produced. How are we going to basically manage it? That was the kind of a situation that we were what do you call currently facing about it. And this one, it is also important to know how currently this spent wash is basically being treated. And if you see, there are globally there are around 4 different methods are largely used, but in India, 2 methods are very significantly used, either through a kind of a composting or through a kind of an incineration. And these are the 2 techniques are largely done with a kind of a getting rid of a problem approach, but not to address a kind of a use it as a kind of a resource-based approach. That's a kind of a difference that the system is basically going to bring in. So to have a kind of a technicality, so for every what do you call KL of alcohol, I mean, you're going to produce, you're going to get something like around 10 times the what do you call spent wash. And unless otherwise you basically treat this spent wash effectively, you can get a kind of a beauty on it. But what is more important is the opportunity lied over here. This spent wash was also rich in potassium. And this institute, as I said, has been working on marine chemicals. So we felt that, I mean, since we had a kind of an expertise on marine chemicals, which is one of the marine chemical being potassium, we said, why not we basically try this source as a kind of a raw material for potash? So that was a kind of a spark that gave a kind of an what do you call an opportunity for us to what do you call explore spent wash as a resource of potassium. Fortunately, the concentration of the potassium in the marine chemical source, like say for example bittern, and here are roughly similar. So the chemistry can be basically tried out. Whatever we have, one can try with a kind of a marine chemical system of inorganic origin. The same thing can be basically extended for this organic origin also. And with this in mind, so one decided to explore whether we can develop a methods for extracting this potassium selectively and use this potassium as a kind of fertilizer. And it is very important, and I'm sure that every farmer of this nation uses potash. The reason being, potash is going to have a kind of a significant impact in terms of what do you call nutritional value for the plants. And if one were to also understand, unfortunately, largely we are a potash dependent nation as far as the imports are concerned. So, I mean, this would give a kind of an opportunity again that, I mean, the substitution of potash as a fertilizer, which is impossible for us to avoid at this point of time, and whether we can basically indigenously make it so that we can, to an extent, reduce this kind of an import dependence. And this was the thought with which we have taken up this work of extracting this potassium from this spent wash. So what is so great in it is when you extract this potassium, you also basically try to basically remove the organics and also the water that is going to be one of the last final product is going back into the distillery. So what does it mean is the entire process is a zero liquid discharge process. So this was demonstrated in a kind of a in the laboratory in the flask, like the way that most of our laboratory people were doing. And there come a kind of a private industry which is located in Ahmedabad called as Game Process Systems. But when they came, something like around 5 years back to this institute, they were not knowing that this kind of a work is happening in the institute. But they felt there is a kind of a humongous opportunity for this particular work. And they said, you are working in a kind of a lab. It is impossible for you to translate it into a kind of an industry. But unless otherwise we demonstrate a kind of a pilot validation. They said, we will, develop, and since this being a kind of an engineering company, they said, you know the chemistry part of it, we know the engineering part of it. So we will create a kind of a plant with all engineering, incorporating whatever the chemistry that is developed in your flask. And that's the way they developed a kind of a pilot plant. And this pilot plant was put in one of the sugar distilleries in Gujarat, in a place close to Cambridge, and where almost all the sugar industries who came and then visited this particular pilot plant to see whether this is really happening. And that is something which is a great a beginning of transitioning the research work that was happening in the labs was transferred into a kind of a land through a kind of a private intervention. And what's more is the organic chemistry, the organic part of the material was tested as a kind of a fodder, where we have validated with a kind of a two different organization. Again, I'm telling you how the collaboration expands. The dairy research institutes were all involved in the validation of this organic product, which we call it as a DPV, deep potash vinasse. And when they said this can be used as a kind of a substitute for molasses as a cattle feed, and where the cattle can be fed to a kind of a certain percentage, and they produce a good quality milk with a kind of a good increase in the yield of the milk, which is bettered by a kind of a dairy also. And this specific things is a kind of a sustainable solution for the fact that it is creating a kind of a value chain opportunity for all of us, in the sense of providing a kind of an additional revenue for the farmers, because farmers can produce more amount of cane. Okay, the reason being these are having a kind of a limitation. The current technologies are having a limitations of number of days of operation, whereas this new technology that is developed will provide an opportunity for a longer days of operation, which means a higher revenue for the sugar mills, sugarcane producers and sugar mill distillers, as well as the energy producing sectors, as well as the dairy sectors. Everybody will be basically creating a kind of a win-win situation. And this particular, there has been a kind of a very strong stakeholder engagement, as I said. And this particular technology, we are very happy to say that, of course, this has also got a kind of a national recognition. And one of the technologies which was given a kind of words of appreciation from the Prime Minister of our country, Shri Narendra Bhai Modi ji, and also got a kind of a lot of awards and recognition. What is so important to know is it's so glad that a commercial plant based on this particular technology is now currently operational in Maharashtra, and we have the dream of putting some similar kind of a plans through these technologies and its allied technologies of generating potash from this spent wash or their associated products in the state of all states of the country wherever the distilleries are operating. And just imagine within 5 years of time, things which were basically happening in the flask is now what you call translated into a kind of an industry, a working industry producing potash fertilizer, which is taken up by the what do you call potash distributing organizations of this country. And this is the kind of a success story would not have been possible had there not been a kind of a private what do you call participation in what do you call believing in the technologies that were produced in the flask to be taken into a kind of a commercial scale through a kind of an investment of putting a kind of a pilot scale operation, validating it, and all these pilot scale operations also give a lot of learning in the curve, and these learnings were basically deployed when the commercial plant was basically made. So the learning curve, both for the institution as well as for the industry, when they basically amalgamate each other, the outcome will be always, I mean, kind of a very, very positive and encouraging. And this is something which is a story which purely involved in a kind of a public-private partnership. And there's another story. This is the last story that I'm going to share it with you. It's a kind of a public-private partnership. What do you mean by that in this particular story? Where, I mean, you will be basically having a kind of a common man, public, as well as, I mean, a kind of a national institutions as a kind of a public entity, and also kind of a private partnership, which is altogether needed for a translation. As I said, I mean, this institute has been working on seaweeds, which are commonly called as, I mean, which are technically called as marine macroalgae, which are commonly called as seaweeds. The fact is, I mean, India is one of the what do you call richest country in terms of the seaweed biodiversity, and we also are what do you call involved in the cultivation of the seaweeds. And this cultivation started heralded through a kind of a sustained research taken up by this institute some 30-40 years back. And in the last 20 years, there has been a kind of a consistent cultivation of seaweeds in this country, in the coastal what do you call sides of the country, especially in the state of Tamil Nadu. What is more important is the story that I'm going to share it here is a kind of a seaweed biostimulants. What is this? When you take a kind of a seaweeds from the sea, you basically crush this seaweed, you get a kind of a juice, and this seaweed juice, we call it as a seaweed sap, and these can be used as a kind of a very strong biostimulant. How did we build this partnership? How did we basically make this story? You can see that, I mean, these seaweeds are basically grown in sea. One of the seaweeds that I'm talking about on the left-hand side of the image, the Kapaphycus alvarezi, one of the seaweeds which this institute has heralded. And when you cultivate these seaweeds, you can basically what do you call, as I said, get a kind of a variety of products from the seaweeds. And one of the product is a seaweed sap, which is what do you call, acts as a kind of a biostimulant. And what is so important is this particular seaweed sap is what do you call, tested for its efficacy in 20 different states through different agricultural institutes and agricultural universities. Something like around more than 42 institutes and universities were involved. This work would not have been possible that, I mean, the discovery of activity of the seaweed-based biostimulants were demonstrated in the pots and demonstrated in the small farm area of the institute. But for it to be validated across at the pan-India level, where the geography is going to be different, the nature of crop that is going to be cultivated is going to be different, the nature of the soil is going to be different, how the seaweed-based biostimulants behave under different conditions of the Indian geographical conditions and soil conditions was one of the endeavors which came. And this particular technology was what do you call, taken by a startup. Okay, taken by a startup, something like around roughly close to 18-19 years back, with a kind of a very, very small investment of something like around 3 to 4 lakhs. And this was the what do you call, beginning. And then they said, I mean, let's make a kind of, when we demonstrated after, I mean, they in fact, when they took the technology, the seaweed sap was not even known about it. So I mean, they took the technology for another product from the seaweeds called as carrageenan, which is used in our ice creams and jellies. So they took that particular technology And we accidentally found this through a kind of a very, beautiful scientific observation by the scientific researchers. And that's what observation makes a very important criteria for researchers like us. And then, we said, why not we basically validate it? So their industry then engaged in that, manufacturing of this one. And then we, validated with the help of the, agricultural research institution. And this was a kind of a more than 4 to 5 years of a hard work carried out at different parts of the country and on different kinds of the crops. And one of the beautiful things that emerged is these seaweed-based biostimulants were indeed imparting a kind of a benefit for the crop in terms of productivity, ranging from something like around 10 to 37%, which means, on an acreage basis, the farmers would be basically getting a kind of a higher productivity of the crop with the addition of the seaweed-based biostimulants. What is so important about it is the seaweed-based biostimulants were initially even before this intervention, they were some of the rich farmers were using the seaweed-based biostimulants which were imported from the country, and this particular gave a very remarkable intervention wherein the seaweeds which are basically cultivated in the India and the seaweed sap that is basically produced in the Indian conditions are tested on the Indian soils and demonstrated for its efficacy. And I'm so happy to see that this particular scientific intervention is, as I said, these are the different crops at different places. Validation were done. What is so more gratifying is it has significantly impacted the socio-economic status of the seaweed growers. Why I am telling this? So seaweed growing is largely a women-centric activity, and most of the women who are involved in the kind of a cultivation, since there is a kind of a significant demand of these seaweed-based biostimulants, opened up a kind of a new markets. Many women got engaged in this seaweed cultivation business, and we have done a kind of a very through an agency, the socio-economic impact of these women. And they said, their independency in terms of earning, independency, and their contribution for the family's well-being in terms of education and health, all these factors, because of this scientific intervention, it created a kind of a huge impact. What is so more gratifying is we have recently, I'm so happy to share this particular news over here. A company which has started with a few lakhs, something like around 18, 19 years back, is now, close to a kind of 150 crore company. And this all happened because of the continuous R&D that has gone into the validation of the product, in understanding the science behind how this product is basically working, and reaching this product to the hundreds and thousands of farmers of this country. This particular socio-economic impact assessment provided a very conservative estimate that this intervention has helped our farmers, Indian farmers, in the last year, that is 2021, an additional income of something like around 1,500 crores. And this is a story, again, started in a pod with a kind of a public engagement, with a kind of a private participation, with lots and lots of industry, lots and lots of institutional support. This would not have been just possible. Lots and lots of agricultural research universities and institutions have been involved in this work, and that created a significant impact on this one. And this is not ended in the plant alone. And this same seaweed sap has been now extended into animal feed additive also, and it's showing a kind of a phenomenal response both for the cattle and poultry, including that of methane emissions by the bovine cattle. And this is, in the next 5 to 7 years down the line, and most of our cattle breeders would also be using this seaweed-based bioactive sap as a kind of a feed additive, as a kind of in their daily use. And I'm so happy for making a kind of a fine and specialty chemicals, or recovery of potash as fertilizer from the distillery spent wash, or the use of a seaweed sap as a plant and animal biostimulant or a feed additive is only would have been possible because it was never on a you-win approach or a they-win approach. It was on a kind of a we-win approach. And this requires a tremendous amount of teamwork, exchange of information, inspiration, and collaboration. And that's how, I mean, when you basically do a kind of a trust and share and support each other, and you will basically end up a kind of a success. And this is not only there in other domains of science, this is there in the other domains of other domains like business or non-scientific domains. But I'm 200% sure science is not an exception. And in fact, the way that, I mean, science is basically growing at a pace which is impossible for the human being, a normal human being, to fathom. The collaboration is highly necessary. It is the order of the day that it is necessary for the collaboration. So with this, I mean, I once again, thank the organizers. And I also urge the students and young researchers who wants to pursue high quality research on the areas that we work in. You're most welcome to this institute, and then interact with our people. And some of the contact addresses are given on this page, on this slide. So with this, I once again thank for the opportunity that is given for sharing some of the success stories with all of you. And where, I mean, we wanted to, I personally wanted to give a kind of a take-home message that scientific collaboration is necessary for the growth of science on the whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I would like to request the participants that if you have any query, you can please unmute yourself and ask your question to sir. We'll have a question answer round for a few minutes.
There is no any question. I would like to thank Professor Kannan sir for giving a very good informative lecture on the process of collaborative as the what is the importance of science, what is the process, and what is the importance of partnership, by explaining the successful story of this on this field. Once again, I thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, ma'am. Dear students, if you have any query, you can ask to the experts, right? Else, now we are proceeding further with our second lecture. I would like to request Dr. Ramesh Kothari sir to give brief introduction about our second expert, Dr. Rajesh Patel sir.
Am I audible? Am I audible?
Sir.
Am I audible?
Well, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Rajesh Patel, who is a microbiologist. He graduated and post-graduated from the Department of Biosciences, Saras University, Rajkot. He also received his doctoral degree in the subject microbiology from Saras University. He has done his PG diploma in bioinformatics from Bioinformatics Institute of India and a diploma in management from Indira Gandhi National Open University. He has started his academic career in Christ College, Rajkot in 1999, and then worked in M. Chandracharya North Gujarat University from the year 2004 to 2017. From 2017 onward, he is working as a professor in the Department of Biosciences with Narmad South Gujarat University, Surat. He is the coordinator for NIRF UGC SAP, DRS project, bioinformatics laboratory and supercomputer facility at VNSGU Surat. He was awarded a number of fellowship. He was awarded a Young Scientist Travel Fellowship. He also awarded a fellowship from UNESCO and for international training course on RNA biotechnology. He contributed as a resource person in CSIR open source drug discovery for tuberculosis. His current research area include extremophile, microbial enzymology, metagenomics, and drug discovery. Dr. Patel has published more than 58 research papers with 1,120 citations and also contributed to 9 books. His H index is 16 and I-10 index is 20. This shows his potential in the field of research. Under his guidance, 8 MPhil students and 6 PhD students have completed their research work. And currently, 6 PhD students are pursuing his or her research work in a wide, broad range of areas of different aspects. He has completed 7 research projects and 3 research projects are in progress. Dr. Patel utilized his educational and research capability and the ability to impart the knowledge effectively to assist the students as well as society. As a personal note, I would like to congratulate Dr. Rajesh Patel for successfully establishing an RT-PCR laboratory in Veer Narmad South Gujarat University in the difficult time of COVID and working tirelessly day and night for the betterment of the society. So I heartily welcome Dr. Rajesh Patel, my best friend and colleague, on this auspicious occasion of National Science Day. Over to Professor Rajesh Patel.
Thank you, Ramesh sir. So it is my pleasure to have the occasion to interact with you all. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I think how much time I am having? 1 hour or Ramesh?
I think you have 1 hour time, no? Ranjan madam?
Yes, yes, sir. 1 hour.
1 hour time.
Okay.
1 hour.
So let me share my presentation. So then we'll start. So screen is visible? Hello?
Yes, yes. Yes, it is visible. Yes, it is visible.
So first of all, the theme which is selected for the today's entire event is Science for Society. So I think this is the most appropriate theme which can be selected in the year 2022. As this entire year of the 22, it is known as to be year of the basic science and the sustainable development. So the entire presentation, whatever I have prepared, that I have prepared in the 3-4 different sectors. So the first sectors will be talking about that how the United Nations goals are there for the sustainable development, then some of the means by which we can achieve it, and what is the basic role of the science. And as I'm coming from the biological science, I'll be just enlightening some of the bioscience fundamentals which can be utilized for this purpose. And at the same time, as this entire function is done with the help of the IIC and the startup, so I'll be just talking few ideas that how even the startup or the science can be utilized for the development. But again, this development is not only the development which we are talking about sustainable, but that is about the building the business of the biotechnology. So that is a way by which we are just going for the entire presentation. So we'll be just starting with the first part right now. So science, suppose we are taking, then science is the greatest collective endeavor. It contributes us in a various different aspect. So it, first of all, everyone who is born on this earth, always they want to have the longer and healthier life. So always any person, suppose you are entering in any field of the life, any stage of the life, suppose you are asking that what you want to have, and always that is the long and the healthy life. So that will be about the monitor of the healthier life and other. And that is the reason that science more or less utilized for most of the cases for the medicine to cure our diseases, allergies, aches, pains, and lot many things. Along with that, science is basically changed the nature in which we are just residing in the nature also. That from the nature only we are getting our all the basic needs, our water, food, provides energy. So this everything we are collecting from the nature. But the way in which humans are consuming, that is different with comparison to the all other animal on the earth. And due to that only, we have also entered in some of the conflict with the nature also. At the same time, science is also important or also useful for creating the fun, sports, music, entertainment, and even the latest communication technology, by which only we are meeting virtually also. But not all the list that even the science is also important to nurture our spirit. So that way, suppose we are taking the science, then science is having the multidimensional way in our entire life. But as now we are entering in the entire era of the civilization, where even science is also changed the way in which we are living and the way in which the world is looking to us. So now there is a need to see the balance between the science and nature, science and society. So for that reason only, first of all, we'll be just going through the entire concept of the UN Sustainable Development Summit. So few of the presentation I have just borrowed from the entire Sustainable Development site only. So I have not modified that also. So this summit was basically talking about the different aspect, and that was having the agenda of the 2030. And this was having the entire part, more than 150 head of the states and government as shown. And they've just given the entire national goals. This entire United Nations goals are basically depending upon the 5 areas of the participation. So basically this goal is stimulating for the next 15 years in the 5 typical area or the critical importance point. So that is talking about the people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. So why we have to look after this? That suppose you are observing our entire evolution of the life, then we have seen that initially our human population that was residing in the forest. Slowly they have just taken over the forest in such a way that they were able to manage the regular eating and even the food habits. And due to that only they have changed the entire normal path of the human being. And due to that only slowly we had the development of the agriculture and other. So that is a way by which first of all we've entered in the entire era of the agriculture development. Due to the agriculture development and other, to increase that only we have developed such a kind of the next generation technology, and that technology was including the machinery, and we had entered in the mechanical era. In the mechanical era, we have developed so many different kind of the developmental processes by which we have just increased the production in such a way that we can take over the need of whatever is needed by us in the human being. And same way, this entire era of the 21st century, that is again an era of the knowledge. So that way we have changed the entire nature. So now suppose we are talking about the entire prosperity, then now to see that how people, planet, prosperity and peace can be come together with the partnership. And on this theme only they have just developed the entire goal for the UN Sustainable Development. So these are the 17 goals which are just given. So we'll be not taking the much detail of the all the goal, but we'll be just taking the role of the science in all of this whenever it is relevant to them. So out of all the goals, you can observe that some of the goals are very irrelevant looking when we are just looking at it for the first time. That for the no poverty, what would be the role of the science? But again, we are having the role of the science in the no poverty, same way zero hunger, good health being, we can have the direct relation with that. Quality education, again we have the role of the ICT and education development over there. The gender equity, that would be having our social behavior and other part. You can have the clean water and sanitation requirement. Affordable and clean energy is required. Decent work and economic growth is required. Industry, innovation and infrastructure is required. Reduce inequality and sustainable cities and communities are required. And again, we require the responsible conservation and production pattern. We have to fight with the climate change. Life below the water we have to also preserve. And again, life on the land also we have to preserve. and we have to maintain the peace, justice, and strong institution with everyone. And this requires the partnership of all the 17 goals together. So these all are the sustainable development goals. And as a scientist or as a science student, it is our humble duty that we have to look at in which area we are working. Some way or other, we have to contribute to this national or international goal for the development. Now, the few key facts about the sustainable development goal, in short, that is also known as the SDGs. So the global goal needs you. So it's only up to the government that will build upon the action, and they will be just taking the bidding impact. Similar to that, this goal will change the way in which the world is doing the business. Earlier, we have just seen that we had the development of the industrialization when we are just talking about only the money. But now we are also talking about the environment. So we'll be just creating our goal in such a way that we'll be doing the business by giving the lesser harm to the environment. Same way the global goals are one and for all. Same way you can have the lot of other kind of the challenges whenever you're talking about the global change. Now, suppose we are taking that entire thing, that how the sustainability and innovation, it becomes a platform for the prosperity. So we have seen that as a science student or as a science person, we have to think everything in an innovation way. And whenever you are talking about the sustainable and innovation way, so to maintain our prosperity, we have to find out a suitable way where we can have the innovation, where we can have the prosperity, but we can maintain the environment in a natural environment. And that requires the balance between the sustainability and the innovation. So basically sustainability and the innovation. So we are having the three things with us. We have the planet, we have the people, and we have the money. And we have to maintain the balance between all of this. Suppose we are taking anything like the Arctic sea ice is dropping, and that will be giving the lowest level since the modern recording is taken. So that becomes again a great opportunity for us as a scientist, that how we can find out a way in which we can increase the role of the science to develop this. Similar to that only, we had the lot of problem of the pollution, weather is getting crazy, and we have to find out a way by which we can also maintain the balance in the climate change environment. So meeting the need, the present, without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet the own need. So now that becomes a global challenge for everybody, that we have to survive, but at the same time, we have to also maintain our resources in such a way that even our next coming generation can also contain these needs from the same on the planets, and that require the systematic use of all these resources. Sustainability brings with the three elements in the harmony. So whenever we are talking about the sustainability, we have to maintain the three things in a line. We have to see the environment, we have to see the society, and we have to also see the economy. So the science is basically working for the human being and working for the society. But when it is working for the society, it has to maintain the balance for the economy also, and it has also maintained balance with the environment. Like that, you can see that before a few years, everybody was having the more craze about the more and more different kind of the petroleum vehicle, and people used to bring that new vehicle a day. But now you can see that people are realizing that whatever the hydrocarbon pollutions we are having, due to that there is a harm on the environment. And at the same time, people are now shifting slowly to the electronic vehicle, and this electrical vehicle that will be maintaining the environment. But at the same time, you can see that these vehicles are not economically feasible. So that is the reason the government is trying to promote in such a way that people can go for that. So that way, to maintain the balance, we have to see both these things. We have to see the economy, and we have to see also the environment. So people, prosperity, and planet, we have to maintain these three things in a line. Now, suppose as a biologist, we are observing the entire planet, then we can see that life is starting from a very building block of the life, that is starting from the cell. So each cell would be having the basic nature, and the cell is a living entity or the unit of the living system. So this is a basic part, that what the cells are there, that cell is also having the maintaining their own sustainable nature, and the cells are also having the capacity to imagine and sustain itself up to a certain period of the life. After that, that will also get died. Same way, suppose you're observing that whatever the life is there, that is also following the basic law of the physics, first, second, and thermodynamics law. That is the law of the conversion of the matter. So you can have the conversion of the matter, and this conversion of the matter is only creating the different kind of the fractions, and due to that only we had the lot of problems also. So we have to maintain the law of the biology and law of the physics also in the development. Now, suppose you're observing the evolutionary biology, then we can see that the billions of years ago the life has started. Initially we had the primitive cells. So I'm not going in much detail because I'm sure that some of the known biology persons would be getting bored with all the details. So we can just see that as the evolutionary development has done, we had the development of the advanced kind of the creature. And this, whatever the creature are existing on the earth, that is originated from the cells which are there on the earth before few years, before many years. And due to that change in the nature, now that is also getting to be changed. Same way, suppose you're observing the ecology, then you can see that whatever the organisms are residing on the earth, that is also consuming everything from the nature on. So that would be taking the nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and water. That will be maintaining its own biochemical cycles. And due to all these biochemical cycles only, you can have also the matter or the planetary cycle. So this cycle is also in the balanced way. If it is there in the balanced way, then you can see that there would be also a proper balance between the biosphere. The sustainability is about the ability to own human society to continue definitely with the natural cycles. So whatever is coming from the sun, we have to take the energy from that, and from that energy only we'll be taking everything. And we can see that entire living system is also like a physics, whatever the law we have seen, that our entire planet is like working as a closed system with respect to the matter. Nothing disappears, everything disappears. So you can see that whatever is generated, that would be recycled in a different way. And due to that only, we are using the lithosphere, we are having the different geological cycles, and due to that only, we can have the normal life on the earth. But whenever we can see that there is overuse of anything, this overuse of anything, that will be creating the problems. So for that reason, we have to see that whenever we are having the development, due to the development, and again due to the civilization only, we have started overusing any resources. And overusing of any resources, typically we are taking the example of the agriculture, that we had the agriculture revolution, and due to the agriculture revolution, to increase the production, we introduce the different kind of the fertilizer, different kind of the pesticides and other, and that has changed the entire balance between the lithosphere. And again, that will be physically infecting even the agriculture production for a betterment, but at the same time, that would be affecting the recycling of them and physically inhibit the nature ability to run the cycle. So due to that only, we can see that now whatever the balance of the lithosphere and biosphere is there, that is getting changed. We had a lot of compound in the nature like the pesticides and other, and even the plastic. So that will remain as such for so many years, and we'll be not finding any solution for them. So that is a way that how we have influenced the entire system. Entire system of the earth is like a closed system where the sun is giving the energy, for that we are not paying any bill. But again, whatever the sustainability mean is there, that we have to always keep. So that is the area in which we are living. And we have to just see that our sustainable society in the nature should have entire subsystem in a systematic way, that it will be have the concentration of the substrate extracted from the earth crust. So initially we have started extracting the metals and other. But after some days, you will be realizing that whatever the metals or the fossil fuel we are having, that is having the limited resources. And if you are overutilizing that resources, we'll be not able to find it out. At the same time, whatever the new compound or the xenobiotic compound we have produced, that xenobiotic compounds are not getting recycled as the natural compound. And due to that only, that will remain as such in an environment for a longer time. And that is basically degrading the physical mean, that whatever the physical mean is there, that is getting damaged to people. In that society, people are not subjected to the conditions that are systematically underdetermined their capacity to meet their needs. So that is a need that whatever the society is needed, that should be meet in such a way that that should not be hampering the entire natural balances. So what we have done due to the rapid development, that we have declined the resources and the ecosystem and services, we have increased the demand and resources for the ecosystem and services. So earlier, our human population were surviving on a very limited resources. The normal food habits, normal living habits, and everything was there. But now, due to the modern development and living lifestyle, we can see that every day we are consuming unnecessary lot of energy, like air condition and so many other things, and that is creating the overutilization of the natural resources, and that is creating the entire imbalance. So through the innovation, creativity, and unlimited potential for the changes, we have to reopen again the third revolutionary changes, in which our innovation or our science should be done in such a way that even we can just satisfy our demand, but at the same time we can also maintain the basic sustainable nature of the earth. So what you can do is you can just go for the reduce eventual inability contributions. So we can go for the inefficient use to the efficient use. We have to just go for the tight technical cycles. We have to use very limited things in a limited way, which is not in an abundant metal. Same way, instead of the fossil fuel, we have to develop the technologies where you can also go for the renewable energies along with that. So you can see that whatever the things we are having, to reduce it only, you have to go for the change in the pattern in which it is there. So if any chemistry students are there, they can realize that whatever the chemical synthesis they are doing, earlier the chemical synthesis was using the very harsh process. And during harsh process only, that is consuming a lot of energy, and even the conversion of the process was not efficient. And as a byproduct of the entire chemical process, we had the lot of pollutant, which will remain as such in a low environment for a local time. So to reduce that only, we have to go towards the green synthesis, and we have to find out a way in which you can just go for the creating the things in such a way that it can be utilized for the better green usage. So that is a way in which even our science student can go, and especially the chemical science students can go for utilizing their own potential. Then again, to reduce eventually or eliminate our contribution to ongoing physical degradation of the nature, you have to go for the efficient usage of resource and land. Resource from the well-managed ecosystem should be done. So due to the anthropological activity, we have reduced our forest cover, and the reduction in the forest cover only has created a lot of climate change. So now it is always needed that we have to maintain the balance with that, and even we have to go for the more and more plantation along. We have to reduce the eventually eliminate our contribution to the conditions that systematically undermine the people's ability to meet their own. So we should not become that much selfish that for our own safe and healthy production, we are just violating the basic law of the nature. So we have to respect the human rights. At the same time, we have to also respect the nature, and we have to use the sufficient resources for the livelihood of it. So that is a way by which you can just go for the better utilization of the entire natural resources. This everything requires the systematic thinking, and that will also require again a new revolutionary thinking for the other things. So I'm skipping some of this slide because I want to cover the other aspect also. So whenever we are talking about this such scientific system which can be a sustainable, so that is like an elephant. You'll be not able to find out that who will be doing it, where it will be done, how it will be done, and when it can be done. So that way, this entire system is quite complex, and you have to find out a way in which you can just go for the basic part. Again, the sustainable development that can be done by the 4-way. So we can just have the entire approach, which is also known as the ABCD methodology. We have to develop the awareness by which at least we can find out that whatever the resources we are taking, that should be done in such a way that it is not harmful to that. We have to provide the baseline data. So at least we can find out that whatever the baseline data is there, that is now changing, or we are having the any kind of the positive effect or negative effect of it. Whatever the solutions we are taking, we have to find out some kind of the creative solution, like we have talked about the electronic vehicle and other. So by that way, at least we can just maintain our need in a proper manner. At the same time, we can also maintain the nature. And we have to also go for the decide our priority, and we have to also think about the future. So by using this ABCD methodology, we can just go for the better path. So why should we care about that? So you can see that now even the industry and even in the some of the corporates are also showing the entire thing, and they're also having the different kind of the objective, like that they will go for the energy usage, cut down. You can use the renewable energy, you can cut down the waste, you can cut down the greenhouse effect, water usage, planet. So like that, so many other things are there that is beyond the normal business goal that should be also included in your day-to-day business activity. And whatever your business activity would be, like even simple the pizza boy, that can also have the entire thing, that whatever the sustainability offer you can have in your business goal, that can also include the entire thing. So you can find out the new market potential, competitive differences, and platform for innovation. Let's suppose we are taking the entire example of the pizza delivery on. So suppose you want to go for the sustainable organization for the pizza delivery, then instead of using the vehicle, you can just go for the electronic vehicle instead of using the fossil fuel based vehicle. At the same time, whatever the packing material you are using, instead of using the material which cannot be degraded in the nature, you can use the biodegradable material. So that will be creating the new innovative platform, and that will give you the competitive advantage to the other. At the same time, whatever the resources we are taking, in the resources you can also use the non-renewable energy, and that will be reducing your entire energy bill. And at the same time, if you are maintaining all the environmental regulation and even all the government regulation, then that would be quite good for you, and that will be also increasing the morale of your employees. Whatever the increased productivity and reduce employee emissions are there, That will be also creating a better relation with the public and community, and you can also become a good kind of the business, and that can be also become hero for the children and grandchildren. So that way you can see that even a simple businessman and doing any business, if it's keeping some of the goals which we have discussed earlier at its end, then due to that only, that will be not only reducing the cost, but at the same time that will be also increasing the business also. So that is a way you can have the innovation way of thinking and innovation way of doing the business in a normal ways. Now, when we are talking about the sustainability, again we have to see some of the more aspect of that. But few of the things of the sustainability I'm skipping because as it is a IISc lecture, I would like to have the one part which is more useful for the entire startup and other things. So just I'm skipping some of the slides. So I'm sorry for that. Otherwise, I think it will be taking more time. So just I'm starting with the basic thing that whatever the science has there, what the science has done, that as a human being we had the evolution, and our entire evolution is basically due to our ability to communicate. So we have developed the language, and by this language only we are able to transfer the knowledge from the one generation to the another generation. And on this basis only we had the development of the civil society. Now suppose as a biology student, suppose I'm comparing that even whatever the evolution we have seen in the living system, that living system itself is also having the language, and this language is written in a novel way. So we can have the novel way of the non-verbal communication and verbal communication. We can have the few example like this on. In a similar way, suppose we are talking about the life, then the life would be having the everything which is written in the code of the DNA, and from the DNA only that is transferred into the mRNA, peptide chain, enzyme, and then we can have the visible life. So whatever the phenotypic character we are observing, ultimately everything is coded by the DNA and genome. And that is the reason that earlier people have started mining the genome. In the 2002, we are able to find out the complete human genome. And after getting the complete human genome, whatever the data was applied or whatever the data was obtained from this human genome project, that was used for the new discovery path and diverse application. And this diverse application that was started not only from the basic cellular information, but that has also gone for the different kind of the applications. And by this genomic science and other, we want to find out the comparison. We have to find out our comparison with so many different kind of the organisms and so many different kind of the animals and other. And we can find out that comparison, but at the same time, when we are observing everything, this new scientific discovery that has given us the path by which we can go for the sequencing technology, and the sequencing technology has given us power to do something else. So now we had all the era of the COVID-19. So earlier it was very difficult to give the example of the sequencing to the normal layman, but now due to the COVID only, everybody is talking about the sequencing. So now everybody knows that how the sequencing is normally done, how you can have the variant analysis, and what is the change in the mutation is taken. So that way, whatever the DNA sequencing technology is there, that can be also adapted in a greater way. Similar to that, suppose we are taking the different kind of the mutations or different kind of the individuality, and we are finding that each population is having a different nature. And that was the reason that not only getting the human genome from the 1 or 2% is enough, even getting the 1,000 genome from the Indian population is not that much enough. So that is the reason that we have to go for the explore more and more DNA capabilities. And now we are in such an era that we are going for the entire era where you can have the personal genome sequencing. So after a few years, you can find out that as normally we are having our Janma Kundli, similar to that, you can have your own DNA sequence. And depending upon your DNA sequence only, you can have the medicine and you can have your future problem to be solved. So that is the era which is developing in the field of the biology. Same way, whatever the different kind of the gene expressions are there that can be identified, and we can also have the solution to various genetic disorders which were earlier not able to. So this is the way the entire life sciences have explored, and we have also developed the different kind of the medicine, everything out of that. So these are the few of the area in which we are talking about the entire genomic information to be utilized for the height. At the same time, whatever the scientific information was obtained from the different part, that is also utilized to take the microbes for the energy and for the environment, so that an entire knowledge is utilized to clean up the toxic waste, to capture the excess of the carbon, to reduce the global climate, and to create the clean energy sources. So now we can also see that now we are talking about the blending fuel. The blended fuel, we are adding the alcohol, which is generated from the microbial biomass for the betterment of the entire environmental population. So then you can just have the entire balance between the energy and the environment. Similar to that only, we can also have some kind of understand the human lineages. We can find out the migration pattern throughout the timeline. So that are the few of the applications which you can have. Similar to that, as we have seen that agriculture, livestock, breeding and bioprospecting, that is again a major task. So that is also included in the UN Sustainable Development Goal. That again to feed entire population, because every day the population is increasing. So we have to use the science in such a way that we are able to feed entire livestock in a better way. So that is the way this entire scientific information you can use for the entire purpose. Now suppose we are talking about the third part, that whatever the biotechnology or whatever the scientific people we are talking about, they want to use the entire scientific society information for a betterment of their business. So for that, we have to see that how this commercial biotechnology can work. So as a science student, after completion of your entire studies, if you want to use scientific ability for the business, then how you can use it. So again, we have to see that whatever the sustainable development part we have discussed earlier, that should be maintained. But at the same time, we have to see that how you can apply your scientific ability for the commercial application. So first of all, suppose you are taking the biotechnology businesses, then biotechnology businesses can be classified mainly in the three parts. That is known as the red biotechnology, that will include the drug, diagnostic test and other. So mainly the health related aspect is coming under the red biotechnology. Then you can have the green biotechnology, where you can have the enhanced probe, molecular farming, and so many other things are there which is related with the green biotechnology. And the third biotechnology area is there, that is the clean energy or the waste degradation, environmental remediation. So that is the area in which you can have the development of the science and development of the biotechnology. And typically, suppose you're observing that earlier people used to talk about only the red biotechnology or green biotechnology, but now we are concerned about the white biotechnology. So right now it is the era of the white biotechnology, where we can just go for the industrial processes that will be increasing the entire sustainable nature. So that is a way, again, our attention towards the biotechnology is getting changed. So this is a way by which entire microbiology, molecular biology is working. So we are not going in the much detail, because as earlier also we have seen that entire earth is a closed system. And in this closed system, we have the ecology where all the communities are living together. All the organism or all the different kind of the entity which is living, that will have the physiology and molecular biology. And this physiology and molecular biology, ultimately that will coded by the different kind of the genes and other. And that has developed the entire new science for the development, that whatever you are observing in the living system, at a molecular level, you can find out the relevant gene, and we can find out the entire way by which you can modify that genes, or we can explore that gene for our betterment. So that way, whatever the ecology was there in the earlier part, that was studied at a community level. Later on, with the physiology, botany and microbiology, we find out the different kind of the biological process related to that. And then when we had the enough knowledge of the molecular biology, we want to find out the relationship between the different biological entity and different genes. And after that, we have utilized the multidisciplinary approach, where we were able to not only understand the molecular biology, but we were able to modify the molecular biology for the better product of the needed part of the human society. And in this way, the entire biotechnology was initially developed. Mainly the emphasis was given on the drug, because emphasis was on the drug is given because the drugs are the less expensive than the hospital treatment. Drugs are the only effective treatment for some condition to fill the unmet market. And post R&D drug production can be very low, and that will be the high market. So you can see that in the COVID era only, when the COVID has initially started, people want to find out a drug for the COVID only. So that is the way by which whenever we are having any threat on the human mankind, always our savior is coming from the drug. So that is the reason that first of all, the molecular biology is mainly utilized to create the drug associated companies. So there are so many different kind of the synthetic companies and synthetic drugs are available. At the same time, so many biological drugs are also coming. And similar to that, now we have seen that even the development in the drug level systems are also developed, where you can have the dosage is very low, and this usage of the control environment that is done by the different kind of the implant, liposomes, page and dosage. So you can just deliver the drug whenever it is needed, just to reduce the overuse of the drug. Because as we all know that due to the overuse of the antibiotics, now we're having the problem of the antimicrobial resistance. To overcome that only, the efficient drug delivery system is already designed. Now again, to deliver the biologicals, very challenge is coming, and this challenge include the develop the effective delivery system. And again, we have to find out the opportunity where efficacy and safety, both things are there. So whenever we are talking about the drug development, always you have to see both these things together, safety and efficacy. We have seen that even in the COVID-19 era, immediately we have gone for the development of the different vaccine. It has taken again 1.5 years to get the vaccine because it requires the proper study that whatever the vaccine we are using, that is efficient and that is also the safe. And after passing through that only, we get the entire vaccination parts. So whatever the drugs are there, that is again coming from the different part. Earlier, we can take the classical example of that. In this classical example, we can take one Taxol. So Taxol was the anti-cancer drug that was developed in the 1980. And the Taxol was basically developed from the naturally slow-growing plant, which is present in the Texas city. So it was taking 600 years old trees to require to create the drug which is required for just one patient. So even though we are having the molecules, but it is not feasible that we can cut that much tree and we can have that much kind of the drug for that. So what can be done? So in that era only, the sciences develop a way by which you can have the synthetic synthesis, where 3 methods were developed, and economically you can find out the semi-synthetic approach, where from the growing plant they find out some of the precursors which can be converted into the Taxol. And even today also, Taxol is one kind of the blockbuster drug which is used for the cancer treatment. So that is a way that whatever the science is behind the Taxol, that is done in a such a way that at the same time we are maintaining the harmony with the nature, we are preserving the plant, and at the same time we can also get the drug out of it. So that is a classical example that how we can maintain the harmony with the nature. Same way, suppose we are taking the example of the injection of the insulin. So earlier that was developed from the pig, and now that is developed by the recombinant DNA technology with the bacterial systems. So that is a way by which normally the scientific ability that is converted into the business. Now, when we are just talking about the initial part, then we can find out so many ideas and so many discoveries which can be converted into the different kind of the products and other. But you can find out that always out of all, very few are getting converted into the business. So to convert the scientific ability into the profit-enable business plan, you require again a second level of the thinking and second level of the management techniques by which you can convert the scientific proofs into the profit-enable business plan. So normally for the discovery, you can just have 3 phases. You can have the discovery in the lab, then it will go for the development, and then it will go for the commercialization. So discovery phase is mainly done by the R&D and even with the different kind of the academic institute. And after that only the pharmaceutical companies are taking up, and then you can have the commercialization part of that. So that is a normal life cycle of the entire thing. Now we'll be just taking some of the prototype which is developed in the biotechnology business development. So initially focus on the application of one innovative technology. The only biotech company at that time was that was having the IPO below the price. And after a few years only, they have succeeded in such a way that they have just produced some of the good molecules that is satisfying the need. So that is the entire gene tech business plan. So that is a way by which it is going for the entire development. And that was the first case where the human insulin is produced by the Eli Lilly. And even the gene tech became the first biotech company to market its own drug itself. So that is a way by which you can just have the development of the science, and that can be converted into the meaningful business. But whatever the story we have seen, that is a very bright story and very successful story. And with this way only, many people are going for the startup and many people are thinking of getting business out of it. But again, whenever you are going for the business from the science, we have to see that how it is working. So again, we'll be just observing one case study. That as a biotechnology student, you can just have the production of the novel tomato that can be product at a very sold at premium price. So mainly you can see that tomato which is there in the market, that is having a 2-3 different kind of the properties. The tomato will be quite ripe, and whenever it is ripe, that would be having the red color. But whenever it is unripe, that would be yellow in color or the green in color. When it is converted from the unripened to the ripened form, the ripened form of the tomato, that would be somewhat more fragile. So suppose your entire tomato is transferred from the field in a ripened form to the society or the market wherever it is needed, many a time it will be getting spoiled and you will be getting basic business loss. So suppose as a molecular biologist, suppose you are going at a deeper molecular level, then you can find out that again there will be some of the genes which are associated with that. So we are not going in for the details of that, but there are genes which is normally responsible for the entire process of the ripening. At the same time, the people are having their own traditional method that you can just go for the vine ripened tomato, which can be used as a premium grade. So what they are doing is, so they'll be just going for the vine ripening process, and at the same time, you can also have the gas ripening tomato, like that. Normally, we are having the mango, which is ripened with the ethylene. Same way, you can also have the entire ripening process from the tomato. So that are the some alternative way. But instead of that, suppose as a student of molecular biology, somebody has started the thinking that whatever the polygluconase enzyme is there, which is already reported to associated with the ripening. So they've gone for the highly expressed studies in the red tomatoes and which is absent in the green tomatoes. So what is the challenges? So you have to reduce the expression of the polygluconase in such a way that it can be delay the ripening. So you can produce the tomato that can be transported like the gas ripened tomato, but that are both in the one ripened price. So that is the thing which is required in the market. And you can just compete with the vine ripened tomato because of the greater durability and the longer shelf life. So depending upon that, suppose somebody is working on the molecular biology, so they can go for the isolation of the PG genes. They will generate the antisense tomatoes. After that, they will go for the series of the assay and ripening, and then can go for the entire tomato in such a way that it can be maintained in such a way. But when we are just affecting only one gene, you can see that the nature is also having their own system. So when we are increasing or decreasing the one gene, that will also change the entire matter. So due to that, flavor of the tomato is getting spoiled, and whatever the wild tomatoes are there or whatever the taste was there, that is getting changed. So you can see that whatever the sour tomatoes are there, that will be ripened as fast as wild tomatoes, but that will be getting rotted slowly. And at the same time, by looking to this aspect only, you can go for the FDA approval, you can file and everything. But whatever the floor sour tomato is there, that is not possessing any health risk, that is also required to do that. But after that, when you are just going in the market, then you will find out that whatever the taste of the flares or tomatoes are there, that is not good as with the premium, which is normally created by the vine ripe. So you can see that even after market launch, physically you are observing that your entire project is a very good and you will be not having any problem. But when you are just entering in the market, you can find out that you will be not able to withstand in the entire condition in the market. And due to that only, the product was getting pulled. And that is the reason that flares or tomato has the marginal added value and could not be sold at a profit. So this is a way in which you can see that entire failure of the scientific principle which somebody has taken. So whenever you are talking about the science to business, you have to see that whatever the transformation you are doing, that transformation should be done in such a way that whatever the product is there, that should be accepted in the market, and at the same time, that should be also economically feasible. So that is the way we have to see that we are entering in the market. So we can just see the one more example of that also. So that is the Apogen Biotech first blockbuster drug. So that is a drug which is erythropoietin. It is a hormone that increases the red blood cell proliferation, and typically that is utilized to treat the anemia, and that will also reduce the need of the blood transformation. So initially that was developed, and after this only that was developed by the Amalgam, and after that that was getting marketed. And this technology, we have seen that technology would be having the two things, that whatever the technology would be there, that would be pushing the technology up, and at the same time that will be also pulled from the market. So this, whatever the development you are doing, that development should be also maintain the balance between both of us. So whatever the scientific planning you are doing, that should be done in such a way that that can be converted into the profit enabling business plan. So the next part is coming, that is the regulatory factors. So we can see that in each country, you can have a different kind of the regulation authority. You can have the FDA, US FDA, EPA. So whatever your business plans are there, or whatever your scientific product is there, that should be maintained in such a way that it is following all the regulations which are required. And this regulation is very much important to maintain our harmony with the nature. And if you are breaking this harmony, that will be creating the long-lasting change in this nature. And due to that reason only, now people are talking about the regulation in a better way, that it can be go for the better sustainable. So whatever the business plan you are trying to do, that business plan should be also see along with the requirement of the regulation, and you have to follow all the regulations forward. So these are the few examples of the demonstrate that how the drugs are clinically safe and how it can be delivered. So always the drug discovery that will start from the phase 1, safety, then it will go for the phase 2 safety and efficacy, and then it will go for the expanded trial. So now in the era of this COVID-19 only, we have seen that every day we had the news that some of the molecules that is gone from the safety, some of the molecules that is having the less efficacy, and only few which is having the pass through the trials that is entering in the market. So that way this COVID is make the entire process of the drug discovery quite simple and understandable for the even layman also. So that way for the development of the drug, always we have to go through this entire clinical trial. This is the basic clinical or the drug development pathway, which is going through the entire part. And whatever the known biotechnology or the non-drug biotechnology is there, that will go in such a way that it will go for the basic research. It will go for the proof of principle, refine the properties, prototype and scale, and then it will go for the market and sell product. So now government is also increasing the entire awareness for that, and due to that reason only, government is also giving us the SSIP policy in Andhra. And in that SSIP policy also, the government is giving us grant to create a proof of concept. So whatever the basic research you are doing in the lab, with the limited resources, if you are not able to create the proof of concept, you can take the help of the SSIP and you can just create a proof of concept. So that would be a refined property or whatever the prototype you are thinking in the mind, that would be created. And after that, again, the further development of the funding, you can just go for the market and you can just go for the sell of the product. So that way, suppose you want to enter the non-drug biotechnological product, then that is comparatively easy and rapidly you can enter. But suppose you are comparing it with the drug development, then that will be having the comparatively more milestone and it will be taking the tough for you to get into the market. Whenever you are talking about the development, always the development of the science, it is going in such a way that you can just have the risk versus value versus cost. So whenever you are going for any scientific plan, your value should be also increased. At the same time, your risk should be less. And at the same time, your cost should be effective, that it can be maintained the competition in the market. So that is the same thing which we have discussed with the tomato plant, that whatever the cost is there, that is not maintaining the requirement of the market. So that is the way by which it is better. So these are the three things which is normally required. At the same time, the fourth part is there, that is the IP protection. So the cost of innovation is quite high and the cost of the imitation is quite low. So many times it will happen that you will have some idea, you will have some innovations, but you are not having the entire capacity or entire setup to convert it into the business. But at least what you can do is you can just go for the intellectual property of that. So this R&D involves the high upfront cost, and due to that only you have to develop the research and others. So at least what you can do is you can just go for protecting your IP in such a way that whenever it is getting the proper opportunity, you can go for the selling of that. You can just have the example of the bottle of milk. You can just see the Coca-Cola tin. So the Coca-Cola tin is having the typical opener. So that opener design was maintained by the innovator under the IP Protection Act. And at that time, that was not having any value. But after that, when this Coca-Cola tin has came in the market, he has claimed the IP on that. And due to that same IP only, he earned a lot of money. So at this stage, when you are in the academic field, if you are not able to convert the scientific principle into the principle which can be commercialized, but at least you can go for the intellectually property right protection. So you can just go for the patent. Suppose you are in the industry, then you can just go for the trade secret, trademarks, and even for the copyright and others. So that is a way by which you can go for the intellectual property right. Again, along with that, patents and trade secrets are there. The government is also promoting the patent, and government has also given us the patent cell in almost all the state university. So during your study, if you are finding something good which can be patented, so it can be utilized for the further. So that way you can utilize your science for creating the patent cell. Right? And whenever you are having the entire development, always you have to see that you have to maintain the curve. And whenever your curve is beyond the expectation, then only the success will come. So you have to apply the R&D to develop the novel product that is worthy to the multiple of the investment. So that is the way you have to develop the entire science. Now, whatever the science is developing right now, the science is having the 7 A's for the development. So if you want to develop new science or new method, and always that method should be have some smartness. So you can see that now the smart word is coming with everything. Besides the smartphone, we are also talking about the smart biomaterial. We are talking about the smart bioplastic. We are talking about everything which is some kind of the smartness is there. So this smart is adding the some new property to the basic thing. So whatever your product is there, that include the smartness in it. At the same time, sensitivity, because whatever the new methods are there, that is compete with the earlier method with reference to the sensitivity. And always we are producing the more and more sensitive methods. So you can just have the same COVID-19 that we had the two techniques. One, you can have the simple antigen-based method, but at the same time, we are having the RT-PCR-based method. The RT-PCR based method is more sensitive. So that is the reason that that is growing more with comparison with the earlier method. Same way, as we have seen, talked about sustainability, whatever your development or whatever the science development is there, that should be done along with the sustainable nature, and whatever the sustainable product is there, that can only survive for a longer time. Always now the era is of small. People are talking about the nanobiotechnology and nanotechnology. So whatever things were there in the miniature, it is now coming. So the latest development should come in a small. We have to increase the speed, whatever the computational part and other things are there. In that you can see that always the increase in the speed is there. Earlier we had the i3, now i5, now i7. So a lot of speed is required wherever we are talking about the different kind of the product. Again, your production of the scientific principle that should have the selectivity, and depending upon the selectivity, you have to product. And ultimately, whatever the science you are doing, that should produce some kind of the solution for the society. So by using this 7S principle, at least you can just go for the development of the part. So whatever the nanotechnology you are taking, suppose you are using for your entire development of the science, then again you have to think the same nanotechnology in such a way that you will be able to maintain the sustainable goal. And along with that, you can find out some business plan which can be utilized for the betterment. So there are a few of the examples where you can use the nanotechnology. Similar to that, now people are talking about the artificial intelligence, and this artificial intelligence that is looking after for the data analysis, it will be including the machine learning, and by using the deep algorithms and other, now we are entering in the era of the big data. And by mining this big data and other, we can find out so many new part of it. So earlier we used to have the normal customer feedback. Suppose you are going to the any mall, then they will be asking for the feedback. Now the conditions are like that in the camera they will observe your entire expression, and by observing your expression only, they will find out that what is your review about the product. Because when you are giving the feedback, you will be quite conscious, and due to that only you might not be giving the correct feedback. But whenever your expression is taken, that will be taken in a perfect. So that is the way this artificial intelligence is working. And in future, you can have the lot of development in the field of the artificial intelligence. So there are the few other ways why the artificial intelligence is there. Suppose we are talking about the sustainable, then now we are having the two ways that whatever the science is there, what was done earlier, that was for only product. But now we have to do the science for the byproduct also, or even we have to do it for the waste product also. So you can see that in every city we had the lot of problem of the solid waste, fly ash and other. So that becomes a problem for us. So we have to find out such kind of the way by which we can convert this waste into some kind of the useful product. So that is again a way in which you can create a science, you can create a business, and at the same time you can also maintain the environmental harmony. So that is a way you can just go for the development of the new approaches for that. And recently the Gujarat biotechnology policy is also declared. And whenever you are talking about the science, you have to see that how the government is also working. So you can find out a way in line of the government. And mainly whenever we are talking about the special features of the new biotechnology policy, then Gujarat will become the one of the leading state in the country in the biotechnology industry. So it will encourage the process of the bioplasting, of gene splicing and the steam therapy, and capital investment over the 20,000 crore in the expected in the industrial sector of the state is given. So that is the way. Suppose right now we are entering in the field, and if you are looking for some development in the science and even the commercialization of the science, then you have to take the some kind of the area where you can work on the area where the government is looking for the new operations. So same way you can also see that whatever the development is there, now they're talking about the two model. So that is known as this capex and opex model. Earlier people or the government used to give only the capital cost. Capital cost means government will be giving you the entire cost by which you can open a factory. But after opening the factory, whatever the operational cost was there, that was not given. And that was creating a main problem for the beginners. So now government is going for the, again, innovative model where you can have the capex and opex, both of this. So you can just go for the better business development with the government assistance for that. The special feature that whatever the new biotechnology policy is there, that is again promoting the science, especially in the preclinical testing, genome sequencing, and again it is going for the BSL-3 lab vaccine And again, that will provide assistance to the more than 500 industries which are working in the area which we have discussed earlier. So that is the way that if you are right now student and you want to work for that, then at least you can find out the way where you can get the focal point. So the special feature for that, entire provision of the biotechnology policy is taken in such a way that over 1,20,000 new employment opportunities can be created. Again, you can have the 100% reimbursement of the electricity duty, and again 100% PPF assistance to the female staff. So that is a way by which you can just have the better cost. So I think this much is enough from my side, because as we are having the running short of the time, we'll be not discussing middle part. But at least if any question or anything is there, then I'll be happy to answer it. So thank you. Hello.
Yes, sir.
So from my side, presentation is over. If anybody is having any question, then we can just have the discussion on that.
Any question?
Students, if you have any questions, and you can write it in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask the questions directly to the sir. If you have any questions, students.
I think there is no question. Thank you very much, Professor Rajesh Patel, sir, for giving a very interesting speech or talk on the regarding the what is the science and how it can be help us for the partnership also, and what type of research is possible in case of microbiology, how we can convert into that the applied science like that. So once again, I thank you to you for your giving us a valuable time.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to request Dr. Kunal C. Rathod to welcome our third guest speaker, Dr. Vijay Potbare, sir. I would like to request Dr. Kunal C. Rathod to introduce National Science Day celebration at our university.
Welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Kunal Singh Rathod, and thank you very much for joining us for today's third expert talk. And the title of the talk is The Physics Everywhere, which will be presented by a very senior retired professor and well-known academician and a high-energy fluid physicist, Professor V.N. Potbare, sir. He did his BSc in 1967 and MSc in 1969 in physics from MS University, Baroda, and a PhD in 1975 in theoretical nuclear physics from University of Rochester, New York, USA. Professor Potbare did his postdoctorate at the University of Toronto from 1975 to 76. He was a research scientist at PRL from 1976 to 78. Lecturer at South Gujarat University in 1978. Reader in physics from 1978 to 86 at the Faculty of Science, MS University, Baroda, and then Professor of Applied Physics from 1986 to 2009 at the Faculty of Technology and Engineering, MS University, Baroda. Professor Potbare was a UGC Fellow from 2011 to 12 and a part-time faculty at Charuset from 2014 to 17. His research interests are theoretical, statistical, nuclear physics, and random matrices. I warmly welcome Professor V.N. Potbare, sir, to deliver his expert talk. Over to you, sir.
હેલો, મારો અવાજ આવે છે કે?
હા સર, યસ.
હા, ઓકે, અને આ શેર કેવી રીતે કરવાનું છે?
Sir, you can use the share button. Yeah, your slide is visible, sir.
Okay, okay, thank you. So I'll start, all right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Today
Just,
I'm going to talk about
slide show કરી દેજો. Yeah.
slide show.
Sir, F5.
F12, sir.
Need to be F5, sir.
Sorry. Yeah, F12.
ના તો એક પછી એક આવશે, વાંધો નહીં. I will change the slides. Okay, what I'm going to talk about is physics everywhere, and if time permits, then its implications in biology. What I'm going to start is with a story. Mahabharat is a story in Mahabharat where Bhagwan Vedavyas asked Yudhishthir and Duryodhan two different tasks. Yudhishthir was given a task to find out a person in the city, in Hastinapur basically, who is totally corrupt, bad. And Duryodhan was asked to find out a person who is totally good. So both of them went to the city trying to find out person, and it turned out that both of them came empty-handed. Yudhishthir could not find a person who was totally bad because he always found something good in everyone, while Duryodhan always found something bad in everyone. So therefore, both of them returned empty-handed. That is the story that I begin with, because everything I see, everything you see around basically contains some aspect of physics. Basically, Narsimha Mehta says, Akhila Brahmandama Ekatu Shri Hari. So I would say Akhila Brahmandama physics બધી જગ્યાએ છે. There is whenever there is a seat belt, the car suddenly stops, and the body, because of the Newton's first law of motion, which basically says that everything in motion should remain in motion and continues to move, and therefore it gives a jerk. And in order to stop that particular thing, seat belt is used. Now, similarly, there is a headrest in the car. Why is the headrest? Because headrest is necessary, because if the car suddenly starts accelerating, head basically would impact on the back, and therefore headrest is necessary for that particular thing. Ordinary things like eyeglasses, right? If people normally use eyeglasses, and then sometimes you have to shift your eyeglasses in order to see better at the large distance or better at a small distance. This is basically changing the focal length or the image of the object on your retina. Similarly, there is large amount of physics in firefighting. Now, as far as the firefighting is concerned, there is an article in Physics Teacher in 1990, which I have given here, that firefighting basically contains large amount of physics. Well, what is the physics behind firefighting? Firefighting requires three things. First, the fuel, the second is oxygen, the third is temperature. So if all of these three are controlled, then fire can be controlled. So water normally has a very important property, that water has large specific heat, and therefore it absorbs large amount of heat. So whenever the fire becomes, so the firefighters normally sprinkle water, and the water is sprinkled in such a way that it forms very small drops. So therefore it has large surface area, so therefore it absorbs large amount of heat and therefore evaporates. That is one aspect. Secondly, whenever the evaporation takes place, the water vapor is produced, and volume of water vapor is much larger than volume of water, and therefore water vapor displaces the air. Once the air is displaced, then that particular thing, so the oxygen is gone, and therefore the firefighters normally use that particular technique. So the vapor displaces. So there is large amount of physics involved in firefighting. Similarly, the pressure that is put on the water in order to spray, the firefighters have to take care of that particular thing, that the water basically goes out sprinkled. It's not just poured. Secondly, there is large amount of physics in whenever there is a ladders that are put in order to go up and down, how much amount of how many persons can be accommodated on ladder is basically part of physics. Now let us come to the next one. So whenever you take a very hot drink or a hot tea, in order to cool that particular thing, you normally blow air. Now why do we blow air? So because whenever the air is blown, then in that particular case, the vapor that is there on the surface of that hot drink gets displaced and the new vapor is formed. Well, ordinary small things like a holder in a kitchen, sanshi ke vaje. Sanshi, that's basically an example of a lever. Similarly, jack on a lift or to lift a car is a basically principle of lever. Now, whenever you hammer a nail inside a wooden thing or in a wall, it is basically an example of force and pressure. So then you can immediately see that here is a person who is sleeping on a nail bed. Ordinary nail would basically puncture your body, but whenever you are a nail bed, the entire weight of your body is not on one single nail, it is on many nails, and therefore the nails do not puncture your body. Similarly, here is a person who is sleeping on which there is a board kept, and a person is going to break a brick by using a hammer. Now, most of you must have seen similar experiments in circus, where a person sleeps and on that a large wooden plank is there and the elephant walks over it. Now that is because, so it is dangerous, definitely dangerous, but the entire weight of the elephant or entire blow of the hammer is not at one point, it is over a large area, so therefore the pressure is small. So now there is, every house normally has a water washing machine. Now washing machine normally initially it senses how much water is required. Now how does that particular thing work? If you observe the washing machine, it initially goes on rotating, and then by finding out how much rotation takes place, the moment of inertia is involved, and that immediately tells how much amount of water is going to be required. Water removal from washing machine is basically based on centrifugal force. Air cooler normally is not used in Mumbai. Right? Mumbai is a very humid place, and air cooler utilizes the fact that whenever the water evaporates, it cools. But in Mumbai, the evaporation is very slow because the air is normally very large and humid. All right. Now, plumber, whenever he uses a wrench, he is using in the lever part and increases the torque. Similarly, nowadays we don't have pendulum clocks, but pendulum clocks basically depend on pendulum clocks depends on how much length the pendulum corresponds to, and the time period of a pendulum clock depends on what is the length, and so therefore adjusting that particular thing it requires, because in summer the clock summer the pendulum expands, and therefore its time it takes larger amount of time, while in winter it contracts, so therefore you have to adjust the pendulum clock. Now the next thing, by the way, yesterday I was reading something about recent development that has occurred. Recent development is that RT-PCR test. This is a COVID era, so everybody has to go through RT-PCR test. And as far as the RT-PCR test, there is large amount of physics that is involved, and that basically the physics involved corresponds to nano gold particles are required for RT-PCR test, and a new test has been developed by MIT which depends on tiny defects in small diamond particles. Right, the new approach makes use of atomic scale defects in tiny bits of diamond known as nitrogen vacancy. So this is where the physics basically goes in. So physics is not necessarily in the laboratory. Physics is around us everywhere. For example, the dish antenna for the direct to home transmission is normally is a parabolic shape, because parabolic shape takes the parallel rays and focuses at the focus. So copper, then your copper bottom utensils. Why copper bottom? Copper normally is a very good conductor of heat, and therefore it allows the food to cook uniformly throughout the entire utensil. Pressure cooker normally has a boiling, so it basically based on boiling point and pressure. You know very well, whenever the rice is cooked, it requires large amount of temperature, while there is a misconception that pressure cooker cooks the food faster because of larger pressure. It is not because of the larger pressure, it is because of the boiling point is increased because of pressure, and therefore the temperature inside the pressure cooker is much larger than 100 degrees centigrade, and that is why it works faster. Microwave oven, well, microwave oven basically does use physics as microwave, but it's basically, it depends on the dipole moment of water. The dipole moment of water, as you know, has a is the structure of H2O. This is the structure of water. So oxygen is a negative pole, and positive parts are the hydrogen. So therefore it's a dipole. And since this dipole basically goes on vibrating because of the microwave absorption. So there is a story about how microwave oven was utilized. There was a person who was during the Second World War, the radar was used, and there was large amount of microwave research going on. So there was one person, I forgot the name of the person, but the person used to have because you have to work very hard, so therefore you have to work for large amount of time. So he used to carry chocolates in his pocket. So whenever he used to carry chocolates in the pocket, if he was performing the microwave experiments, then his chocolate would melt, in spite of the fact that he was working in an air-conditioned laboratory. Now that is how he discovered that microwave is absorbed by food particles, and food particles contain water, and water absorbs the microwave, and that is why the microwave oven works, basically because of the absorption of microwave by water molecules in the food. Then there are as far as the water is concerned, water is very important for our life. Without water there is no life. As you know, in Sanskrit language there are many words for water. In principle, whenever one is if one has a temperature, fever, then in that our people in our house who takes care of us normally put cold swabs on the forehead. Now why is that? Because whenever the cold swabs are kept in the forehead, water has by the way, water is the largest specific heat of the materials in the world. So except one, the largest specific heat of liquid ammonia, but water has the specific heat of 1 calorie per gram per temperature per degree centigrade. So that is how the water carries large amount of heat, and therefore the body gets cooled and the fever is reduced. Well, there are many things about the water. As far as the water is concerned, the most important part of water is hydrogen bond. Hydrogen bond basically means hydrogen bond is the bond which is normally occurring whenever hydrogen bond is very important also in the case of DNA structure. So therefore hydrogen bond occurs because of the hydrogen is attached to another molecule, and that molecule basically produces because of the hydrogen bond, the dipole moment is there. The dipole moment of the water molecule also is very large. That gives a large dielectric constant. Because large dielectric constant, the whenever any salt or any ionic material is kept in water, it gets dissolved. It forms a solution. Why does it form a solution? It forms a solution simply because water has dipole moment, and then that particular thing, the second the force of attraction depend, or in electrostatic force of attraction, there is dielectric constant that comes in the denominator, and that large dielectric constant produces a very small force, and therefore the sodium chloride, or for example ordinary salt, will get dissolved in that particular thing. Water is a very good solvent, so that is basically very important. Water resists temperature change. Water can absorb and release large amounts of heat. All right. So now let us come to several other things. For example, whenever we drink using a straw, it basically uses atmospheric pressure. So there is large amount of physics. Large amount of physics is involved in many things around us. For example, elephants. If you consider elephants, the elephants have a very rough skin. Very rough skin. Why do they have rough skin? Because of the rough skin, the surface area becomes very large, and elephant being very large requires large amount of food. So large amount of food gets converted to heat, and the heat has to be given out of the body, because otherwise the temperature will be increased. And therefore, in order to increase the heat transport, the surface area of the elephant must be very large, and that surface area can be increased only by making the skin rough. So here is another example of electrostatic effect. The cartoon here basically shows how electrostatic friction produces charge. Now this cartoon basically is just merely for the sake of illustration, but the lightning there is a static electricity generation produces spark, and this spark everybody experiences whenever one goes to a hotel which has a large good amount of carpet, and when you try to open the door with a knob, you probably get a shock. Now the Zeppelin was one of the balloons that was used earlier to air transport by planes, and that Zeppelin used to contain large amount of hydrogen so that the balloon could go up, and then so there was the flight of Zeppelin from Europe to America, and that it was trying to land at Chicago, and at that particular time the Zeppelin, there was large amount of clouds around, and the clouds normally contain electricity. That is how the lightning takes place. So whenever the Zeppelin was landing, the rope of the Zeppelin was wet, and the Zeppelin the balloon being at a very large height had large potential, and when the rope was lowered to be tied to a to the airport, so then in that case suddenly the spark took place, and that spark, because of some hydrogen was leaked out of that particular thing, the entire Zeppelin burned out. So of course later on that Zeppelin, the flights were not the flights were stopped. All right. So anyway, so that is basically how the things occur. So let me go to some interesting aspect for the here is an interesting aspect about that particular thing. So here, for example, whenever we increase the size, all right, size of the animal, and then that size actually requires is very important for the survival of that particular thing, right? So for example, if we increase the size, let us take an example. For example, if one considers the falling from a very large height, right? If a person falls from a 5th floor, he basically dies because of the impact. But whenever a small cat or whenever a small object falls from that, it does not impact. The force is not very large because of the surface area. There was reduction in force because of the surface area. So there is terminal velocity. That is what is very important. So the terminal velocity is what is produced because of the. Now let us consider there is a story of Gulliver's Travels. This was written by Swift, and this is a story where a traveler goes on a travel where he goes to a place called Brogdingong and another place called Lilliput. Right. Now Lilliput is a place where everything is very small, so 10 times smaller than a object. So therefore, if a person there is only 15 centimeters height instead of 150 centimeters, and therefore that is a place where called Lilliput. While in Brogdingong, the person is 10 times higher. So instead of 1.5 meters, person is heavier and it is 15-meter height. Now the question that occurs is whether this is in fiction. So fiction uses large amount of physics. There are science fiction stories written by very great personalities, right? So this is one of the science fiction story that is written by Swift, where Swift basically uses physics principles. So the question that occurs is, can such a small person exist? A person of 15 centimeters height, or can a person exist who is 15 meters height? Now the question that basically comes, because whenever the size increases by 10 times, the volume increases, the surface area increases 100 times, while the volume increases 100 times. So therefore, if the volume increases 100 times, volume increases by 1000 times, because the size increases 10 times, surface area increases 100 times, and the volume increases 1000 times. So 1000 times normal person weighs, let us say, is 50 kilogram. A person in Brogdingong will weigh 50,000 kilograms, right? So if such a person exists, then in that case, you realize that such a person cannot walk at all, because whenever he takes a step, the strength, now as far as the strength of a thing is concerned, strength depends upon the surface, strength depends upon the cross-sectional area. So if our bones are strong enough, but the area of the bone of a Brogdingong person increases only 100 times, while the weight has increased 1000 times. So whenever such a person takes a step, his bone inside the thigh is automatically going to break, because the strength of the bone has increased only 100 times, while the weight has increased 1000 times. So such a thing, basically such a person would never exist. Similarly, with such a person who is 15 centimeters height, can such a person exist? Well, such a person also does not exist. That cannot also exist, simply because whenever the size of a person has reduced, the surface area of every capillary is reduced 100 times. So therefore, in order to supply blood to every cell, as the surface area or the cross-sectional area of a capillary or blood vessel is reduced, then you realize that the resistance is increased 10 to the power 4 times. That means 10,000 times. So therefore, in order to supply blood to every part, the heart of that particular person has to work 10,000 times much faster than ordinary person. So such a thing cannot exist, and that is why such a person cannot exist. Now this simply comes out that whenever our municipality supplies water to us, you realize that the water is supplied through the pipes, and the pipe normally has a diameter of 1 inch, 1.5 inch, 2 inches, and so on. So if the diameter of the pipe is increased two times, the amount of water that you get increases the 2 to the power 4, that means 16 times. So therefore, if you want to get a pipe which is much bigger, then the municipality naturally asks you to pay more. Similarly, let us consider a person who comes out of a swimming pool. Whenever a person comes out of a swimming pool, then he has a surface film of water on his body. The weight of that film is very small. But if an ant falls in water, the ant has a very small amount of mass, and therefore, but the size is very small. So compared to its weight, the surface area is really large, and the amount of water that is carried is much larger compared to amount of water that a person basically carries. So the size, this is basically dimensional analysis that occurs. So dimensional analysis is very important part of physics, and that is normally occurring everywhere in. All right. So now let us consider a the amount of food that we utilize. The amount of food that we utilize, amount of food that we eat. Normally, a person eats roughly about half a kilogram of food daily, right? So roughly half a kilogram of food normally is eaten. So that particular food gets converted to heat because of the food gets converted to glucose, and glucose gets converted to carbon dioxide and water, and it burns in our body and heat is produced. So the heat has to go out of our body, and therefore the amount of heat that goes out of our body depends upon the surface area. So larger the surface area, the amount of heat will increase. Now consider a small mouse. Human weighs, let us say, 75 kilogram. A mouse weighs roughly 50 kilogram. So if there are mice which corresponds to weight of 75 kilogram, the weight ratio basically is basically 17. So therefore surface area of 5,000 mice, all right, 5,000 mice roughly corresponds to weight of 75 kilogram. So this 5,000 mice will require how much amount of food? The amount of food required is because it depends upon how much amount of heat that is given by the mice. So therefore the amount of food required is 17 times that of the man. So therefore that is why small mice require large amount of food. So that is why it is necessary to control. Similarly the ratio. Now if you consider how much amount of a weight a man can carry, right? So therefore the weight that man can carry depends upon how much amount of the strength of the muscle. The strength of the muscle depends upon the surface area. So the man carries certain amount of weight, but a small ant can carry large amount of weight compared to its weight because the surface area has increased. So all these basically things come because of the dimensional analysis. All right. So elephant's heart beats slower than ours. Now let us understand why. So whenever an object becomes smaller, it has a larger frequency. So that is why if you consider a violin, whenever there is string is small, it produces large frequency. When the string is bigger, then in that case smaller frequency. So therefore elephant's heart beats slower than ours. Dog's heart beats quicker than ours. Rabbit's heart is still quicker. Mouse and sparrow, the heart rate of the heart is so large that it is very hard to count. So therefore you immediately realize there is large amount of physics that is involved in everything that is going around us. Now similarly, our cell size of our body, right? Uh, Whenever our body contains large number of cells, now each cell has a particular size. Now the question that arises normally is that why can't we have a big cell, very large cell? Now the question that occurs is very natural, but there is large amount of physics behind it, because whenever the food processes or proteins or etc. are transported from one part of the cell to another part of the cell, the process basically depends upon the diffusion, and the diffusion basically is proportional to diffusion processes. Distance traveled is proportional to square root of time. So therefore, if the cell becomes larger, it requires large amount of time for transportation of the material, and therefore it becomes very large. So if the cell becomes very large, the amount of protein that has to be supplied, so if you consider that particular part, the volume of a cell, so all proteins synthesized according to the instructions of coded in DNA. Greatest fraction of information transferred, so it is basically information transfer that takes place. Information is supplied by the nucleus, and required rate of information transport basically depends upon the distance square. So therefore, if you consider that particular part, you realize that it is if the diffusive transfer rate of a cell, so demand and supply, if the diameter becomes 10 times, the demand and supply becomes 100 times bigger. So therefore, it is not possible to have a very large amount of cell. So in principle, there are many things that are involved as far as the physics part is concerned. So I basically the small animals have a large surface area, so the large surface area, and that is basically why they have water repellent on their body. So therefore water does not contain or does not produce any effect on them. So in principle, you realize that everything is connected to each other. Everything in the world is connected to each other. Physics is once upon a time, I mean, the physics is involved in many things. Of course, physics involved is chemistry. Physics is involved in geology. Physics is involved in medicine. Physics is involved in every aspect of that particular thing. Any medical investigation requires large amount of physics. For example, magnetic MRI technique, or isotope CAT scan uses X-rays. All these basically correspond to all these instruments basically come because of the physics part. So therefore, you realize that physics is very important subject, and it is good that everybody, for example, in quantum mechanics, you realize that chlorophyll molecule contains a very large amount of chain, and that chlorophyll molecule basically utilizes quantum mechanics in order to transport electron from one place to another place. So the quantum mechanics is one of the subject which basically is involved in our body. For example, the very important thing that there is the topic that in quantum mechanics is called whenever there is a pair of particles, the quantum computing is involved, and quantum, what is the word that is normally, that is so it is basically, just a second. तो शब्द नहीं आठवते हैं. All right. So one important effect of quantum mechanics basically is that the migratory birds. So how do migratory birds go from one place to another place without having any GPS system with them. Well, we will come to GPS system also. The birds that fly from one place to another place have a very important aspect about the quantum effect, and because of the quantum effect they can actually go from one place to another place. GPS system also involves large amount of physics, because GPS system involves the theory of relativity, general theory of relativity, as well as the special theory of relativity. So therefore GPS system requires large amount of physics. In principle, physics is everywhere. If you look at everything, then in that case physics can be found everywhere. And as in the words of Kalapi, poet from Rajkot, Kalapi says, જ્યાં જ્યાં નજર મારી ઠરે, જ્યાં જ્યાં નજર મારી ઠરે, યાદી ભરી છે આપણી. હવે એવું કહેવા, it is necessary that જ્યાં જ્યાં, even also in Sanskrit there is a stanza which says that yaccha kinchit jagat sarvam drishyate shruyate pichva antarbahishcha tat sarvam vyapya narayana sthitah. So same way, physics is everywhere. Everything that is we see, we hear, we understand, we feel, all these things are basically involved in physics. I am not saying that other sciences are not important. All sciences are important. Everything is connected with each other. Everything is connected with each other. There is a very good poem written by John Donne, which basically says it's the there is a for whom the bell tolls. There is a poem by John Donne. He says that now this bell tolling softly for another. This is a Christian mythology, where the Christian mythology basically said that whenever a person dies in a village, then the church in that particular village starts tolling the bell. And so whenever the bell tolls, people realize that somebody has died in that particular village, and therefore they go to church in order to pay their respect to that particular person. So the poem basically says, now this bell tolling softly for another says to me, thou must die. He says that it is not that person who has died. Part of you also has died. And any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in a mankind, and therefore never sent to know for whom the bell tolls. So the question, the basically thing is that everything is connected with each other. Physics is connected to geology, physics is connected to biology, physics is connected to chemistry, physics is connected to all aspects. In principle, there is a statement which basically given by a Nobel laureate Feynman. He says physics is the most fundamental and all inclusive of the sciences, and has had a profound effect on all scientific development. In fact, physics is the present day equivalent of what used to be called natural philosophy, from which most of our modern science arose. Students of many fields find themselves studying physics because of the basic role it plays in all phenomena. So in principle, physics is all around us. It's the only thing that you have to have an eye in order to see what amount of physics is involved in each aspect. Well, there are many things one could talk about, but our time is very short, so therefore I will stop here and encourage you to look around and see wherever there is physics, you will maybe note and make a list of things where the physics is found. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving brief and very short and sweet with examples and story about how physics has evolved and how physics is everywhere around us, right? And how it is implication in our biological factors also. We thank you, sir, for this wonderful presentation. Now, any students have any questions regarding physics, how it is related to us, then you can write it in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
कोणी नाही
I think the students don't have any questions. So again, a very thankful to you, sir, for sharing your expertise and experience regarding the physics. Now we will be ending the session, but before that, we will be announcing the winners of today's poster presentation. So hereby, I would like to announce that for the Department of Chemistry, the second winner for poster presentation is Niyati Vegal. Is she here? No worries. So we'll be further contacting them for their memento and the prize, right? So the second winner for the poster presentation in the field of chemistry is Pooja Bhandari. So we congratulate both the participants for having a very good poster presentation and for their future endeavors. I would also like to ask Dr. Piyush Solanki sir to announce the name of the winners for the in the field of physics and nanoscience for masters and UG level. Piyush sir.
Ask to Krunal sir, inform the Piyush sir.
Kunal sir, can you
I'll call him.
sir, to announce the result of for today's presentation, poster presentation?
Hello. Hello.
Sir.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yes. So
yes, sir, you can announce the result of poster presentation for physics and nanoscience.
okay. So first UGPG as our team from IIC and Ranjan Madam and from our side in the physics, we have decided two first and second rank for the UG and PG combined, and 2 awards for the research students. So for the UG and PG, the second prize goes to Hadwadya Rosni Vinod Rai, and first prize goes to Payal Joshi.
Congratulations, both candidates.
Congratulations if they are present, then otherwise pass our congratulations to them. Yeah, and for the research students, the second prize goes to Mayur Parmar from the physics department, and first prize goes to Chintan Panchasra. Hello.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So I hope is there Mayur Parmar or Chintan Panchasra?
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So okay, Ranjan ma'am from my side. Okay.
Okay. Part by. Hello.
Yes, ma'am. So thank you, all of you, all the participants. Thank you very much for attending this session, and also congratulations to all the participants and the winners of today's poster presentation. Surely we will be touched, and for future endeavors, you can always like our Instagram page of SUSEC, so where you can get the updates regarding all the events happening under IIC at our university. Thank you all. We are ending this meeting.
Thank you.